Everyone, we have a full crowd tonight. The Town of Los Gatos Council meeting of November 19th, 2024 is now called to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Ista?
Here.
Councilmember Eni?
Here.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hudis?
Here.
Mayor Badami?
Here. At this time, I will let you know that I'm very delighted to introduce 3 Girl Scouts as our pledge leaders, and all 3 have received Presidential Service Awards. Would Rylan, Skyla, and Sihi please come forward and join me behind the dais? So before they lead us, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Rylan is a 4th grader, homeschooled by her parents. She's been a Girl Scout since kindergarten. Her favorite subject is math. Her favorite activities are soccer and basketball. Community service includes receiving the Presidential Service Award for volunteering in several activities, including backpack drives and community gardening. Welcome. Let's have a round of applause for her accomplishments. Skyla Kioshian is a 6th grader homeschooled by her parents. She's been a Girl Scout for 4 years. Her favorite subject is writing. Her favorite activities are soccer and theater. Her community service includes receiving the Presidential Service Award for 2 years in a row. And she volunteers at an animal shelter and helps make social media posts for the shelter account. Round of applause. Sihi Nambalkar is a 4th grader at Stratford School, and she's been a Girl Scout for 4 years. Her favorite activities are, of course, Girl Scouts and swimming. Her community service includes receiving the Presidential Service Award for a range of community services, including senior center, park cleanups, gardening, and blankets for pets. Round of applause. Okay, so I will hand the microphone as you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. Very well done. Okay, if you could start with the Vice Mayor and make your way down, we would love to shake your hand. Come back this way. We got more over here. Thank you. We also have gifts for each of them. One last round of applause for these girls. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is a presentation, and it's the Los Gatos Thrives Foundation presentation. So would the presenters please step forward? I see Sandy Decker coming forward, Ryan Rosenberg, Tom Pickrow. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. I'm Sandy Decker. I'll say it because I believe it truly, the very, very proud chairperson of the Los Gatos Thrives Foundation. We thank you, Council, for this opportunity to present our work about your community center. We are hoping that you will have read the report. A lot of work has gone into this, and it is an excellent report. So why? why are we committed to creating a community center? The community needs a space to come together, a local place for all to thrive, individuals, families, young, old, citizens, and community groups. To quote our own 2007 Civic Center Master Plan, a community center is a place that strengthens the learning, the fabric of a community by providing a means for the community to come together and learn, debate, reflect, and celebrate. That was nearly 20 years ago, and it's just, if not more important, right now. We know this isn't going to be easy, but we believe that together with the town and community, our foundation can contribute a key role in making it a reality. We welcome you, Mr. Constantine. We're looking forward to your advice and, of course, the reality of working with someone from your position will be really great to work with. We're not asking for any money, so you're off the hook. Now I would like to introduce Ryan Rosenberg, and he'll begin our presentation. Thank you.
You can go to the next slide if you don't mind. Thank you. So the first question is, does the community want a community center? How interested is the community in it? All the research that we've done so far, all the interactions we've had have been strongly in favor. Let me give you some specific examples. We had 2 workshops. Each one drew 100 people. Can you remember the last 2 times there was a public event like that drew 100 people? And we did it twice over just a few months period. That shows you an interest. When we did the survey, we reached out, and I can tell you that I've been in marketing for years, we got 10 to 20 times the response rate that you would normally get when reaching out for a survey. We very quickly were able to get 600 people representing 1,800 residents to, based on house sizes, to respond to that survey. And I can tell you something, those people represented demographically this town, both from an age perspective as well as from household side perspective. That is the town. And what were those people saying? 75% of them, right up front, said that they would like to see a community center. Meaning if you walk up and down the streets, I'm confident, if you walk up and down the streets, grab 4 people, 3 of them will say, explain what it is, they'll say, yeah, I'd like to see that. Only less than 1 out of 20 people said no, and the others weren't sure. That's a high rate of interest. I've done it myself. Speak to people, just ask them, what do you think? And they'll tell you yes. Why do they want it? Well, the problem is that there's a lack of space. I mean, those 2 meetings were held at the Masonic Lodge because we happen to have someone on the group that's from the Masonic Lodge and we could get it. Otherwise, where would we go? You know, we just had our most recent committee meeting down at the Chamber of Commerce because where else, we happen to know someone there. There's not a lot of public space here in town for community groups and others to have events and to do activities. A space is what makes activities possible. Jazz on the Plaz requires a Plaz, right? We need space to do activities. One other bit of interest I want to say, this was not on the plan, but is that I'd like to have Tanner Goulden and Noam Ramon come up for 2 seconds. We don't have much time. They're at the high school, and they've just formed a club. I just found out about this. Tell them briefly what it is.
Yeah, so we represent a group of kids at the high school. You can see some of them here, and some of them in that photo too. We were at one of these meetings earlier. And we represent a group of kids that's very interested in seeing this community center happen. I mean, we've talked to like a lot of high schoolers too, and generally there's a lot of teen interest in this project.
We've kind of been working to form some surveys and reach out to as many different high schoolers, especially as we can. And the only thing we've really seen is such a positive outlook on this project as a whole, and a lot of excitement for it. So yeah, we're super excited to keep working with everybody here and just move this project along. But yeah.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And they formed a club, a community center club at the high school. That shows an interest. Okay. So now it's great to be interested, but let's be realistic here. Could you go to the next slide? Long-term civic projects are challenging, right? I mean, they're difficult in many different ways. But we've overcome those challenges before. I remember back when the library was happening, a lot of people said, oh, why are we doing a library? That's a big investment. Should we really be investing in that at this time? And, guess what? If you try to find someone now who lives in town and say, if we rip out the library, how would you feel about that? People are like, no, don't take the library. We love it. It's a beautiful building. We use it in so many different ways, some expected, some unexpected, right? So people see the challenges, but boy, once you have something like this, people will ask why they didn't have it forever. It'll seem like a part of the town. There are challenges, but they won't imagine the town without it. Go to the next slide, please. And we're not alone in this. Most of our neighbors of similar size have community centers. We're actually unusual in not having a community center. This isn't the whole list. I mean, just think of Saratoga or Campbell, right? You can bet it was challenging for them. They looked at it and they said, this looks like a difficult project, it's expensive, whatever, all these issues. But guess what? They all overcame the challenges and now they have them. Why is that? Because people in the community, the leaders, saw the need, saw the opportunity, and they made it happen. And how do they feel about it? If you go to the next slide. They love them. It's easy to find information about how much people in these communities are loving their community centers. And not just on a theoretical basis, they have specific activities that they're doing that are enabled because they have these centers, right? I think that the key is that we need to have a center, though, for Los Gatos. So we were able to meet with all those other centers. We got their best practices, but then we ran those surveys, we ran our focus groups, and we've been able to come up with a plan that represents the needs of this community. Go to the next slide. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it. It's in your packet, okay? And for those who don't have the packet or whatever, it's actually up on our website. You can download this information. This is a preliminary plan, but it takes all that information together. It looks complicated, but basically it's just two different things. Those are the rooms that we have, and most critically, the type of uses, the many types of uses that you're going to see in a community center, whether it's enabling workshops or performances that wouldn't exist in this town without the community center, or whether it's having a teen area that doesn't exist in this town, or whether it's being able to have various types of meetings, or having social service providers have a place where they could actually meet with their clients. And believe me, there are people in this town that have needs. And so having a community center will unlock the potential for all these activities that are currently not happening because there's no public space for it. Go to the next slide. We also took information from the community, again, this is in your packet, about additional needs that they would have. So the needs are also the programs you would do, the spaces you would need, but also how is the community center? Is it going to be a beautiful building that will add value to our town, make it even more attractive to people? People even love their town more. It seems impossible to love the town more, but it is. Or is it basics, like make sure you have enough storage in here, or make sure you have the parking? Or is it emergency uses, like, boy, given where our location is, we could certainly use another emergency center with all the equipment required. So these are all additional requirements / benefits of having a community center. Okay, I have covered my part, and I would now like to turn it over to Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can see, we're doing two things this year. One is a thorough assessment of what the community needs are for a community center. And the second is to develop a detailed plan of what that would entail, what would be seeing the needs, what would be in the community center. So I'm going to just continue on in the next slide with a little more, and to say, don't worry about the details on the left, but if you say, I need these priority rooms, you just saw a chart on those, well, how much space do you need? How much space it's going to take? So we had a team, and we did an assessment on what's the space for each of these types of rooms. We went back and visited again various community centers, say what worked for you, what didn't, where did you need more space, less space, so forth. and then we did a national survey, and then we spent significant time with LGS Recreation, who provide the services for all the recreation in town, for youth, for adults, and for seniors, and looked at, okay, what do you need? What's working for you? What isn't working? What would be better? And they provide us tremendous space information for this space analysis. The bottom line is it came up to about 29,000 square feet for the interior and about 25,000 square feet for the outside spaces and recreation courts and so forth. It's a little larger than Los Altos, but similar, a town that's the same size and same kind of budget as we are. And then we also checked with some architects and said, hey, have we got the right information to go from what we've collected to a professional analysis for planning? And they said, yes, in fact, you've done more than typical comes to us from consultants that do a detailed professional job. In fact, Janet Tam who is Tam and Noel that designed our library made a nice comment to me. It said, we admire the initiative that Los Gatos Thrives demonstrated, including the amount of useful research gathered and early support already obtained. So in the next slide, once we have an idea of what the space and what it adds up to, then there was one other thing we needed to do for this report, which was to do an inventory of what do we have now? What are we dealing with? You know, what could be enhanced? What do we have and what do we need? And so we did that. We talked to various and community partners, but I particularly want to mention LGS Recreation, excuse the typo there, where we took from their information a list of, for all these centers, for all these activities they do, you know, where they use the space, how much, how they use it. It adds these two buildings to about 9,000 square feet. And then we did inventoried other spaces, Los Gatos, Live Oak Senior Nutrition Program, Live Oak Adult Day Services, some of the service providers who are being included in this interim community center plan that we discussed. We have a tremendous set of service clubs which do things and where they meet, how much space they need, what kind of activities do they have, and need. Places like the History Club, like JCC inventories. We did a rental availability inventory as well as use of spaces that are often found in a community center. Might be in our community center, might not, but what's there in the town. So having done that and benefit from lots of advice and help from people in the community, I'd like to just go to the next slide and say what's next. We would like to do and plan to do an architectural conceptual design. We'll pay for that. We're raising money for it. What does that do? We probably would do it on two different sites, a tighter space site, like down in the Civic Center area, that might be a 3-story and underground parking, a bigger area space that you could spread out laterally. But what we need is a rendering of, okay, what would a building have to look like? And let's have some visualization of it so we can appreciate what it is in this plan. And also so we can do fundraising. I mean, we have to see, what am I fundraising for? And so that's the first one. Next is a site selection. We have a team looking at possible viable properties that might work for a community center site. We hope to have 2 preliminary options available by the end of the first quarter. All these things are to be done by the end of the first quarter of 2025. Third, we seek to partner with the town to find appropriate means at which we could work together, that we can help you and you can help us and put us to work to say what do we need if we really want to realize this vision. We realize it's a major project. There are many challenges. It doesn't just happen. And these challenges have to be met and solved. And we're here to do that. Then a draft funding plan. One of the major challenges is paying for it. And so one of the first things we'll be doing is a draft funding plan. How does other communities raise money for that? We know the town doesn't have sufficient funds to pay for it, but maybe they can help or with assets and so forth. We intend through the community to do strong fundraising. We'll be launching a fundraising committee and starting fundraising in the first quarter. We know that bonds are a typical way. We're certainly going to be working on grants, and there are other mechanisms that are typically used for funding a community center. We know we're going to need all of these and have to put a package together. That's why it takes a strategic planning with the town and people who want to help. And I'd say there's a lot of community members who do. If we look finally then at that, we'll continue our ongoing community work, meeting with stakeholders, understanding their needs, having them partner with us, I hope, and us partner with them to try and reach and provide communications. So those are what we want to do. Now let me summarize at the end. I apologize, this is sort of a quick scan through. The details of the report are on lgcommunitycenter.org, and what we have is the draft report. In December, we will finalize the report based on input that you all and the community gives us over the next several weeks. So what have we done? We've provided a conceptual, we've completed a conceptual community center needs analysis. We have put together a plan for a community center, what it would contain based on the community priorities. That's one. We've found that we had strong community support for the center, and like the library, we realize that this takes a concerted effort, that it is something that can be a hub for the town and add to the fabric of a small community feel here in town and be an asset for the town for many decades to come. So we feel this is worth a major effort to achieve. We know it's not easy. Third, we will be asking in January that the town council consider including this in their strategic priorities for 2025, so we can continue our work and hopefully partner with the town in trying to make this become a reality. And I stand for questions.
So thank you for a very compelling presentation. I see Councilmember Moore with his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tom, Sandy, Ryan, the whole Thrives board. You all are a very impressive and energetic group. When you all formed, I did not think we would already be here. So it's very, very impressive. I'm very glad to have you all working on this. So you talked about working with the town as one of the, generally, you talked about adding this as a strategic priority. Are there other things that you all are thinking that partnership sort of in the next year time frame would look like?
Well, I look to the council and the town manager to how we should best proceed. We would, I think you've seen, we're serious. We're not afraid of the nuts and bolts. We want to get down, roll up our sleeves and do the work. So if you say, okay, let's put it on the CIP, but let's just put something very simple, like we're going to scope it out and get a plan for what the funding would have to, a draft funding plan and so forth, that we do. You tell us to go off and raise X dollars, we'll do that. We're going, so I think I'm no town administrator, so I look to you to say, how can I help you? I know your staff are very busy, and I don't want to interfere with the important work they're doing, but I want to be able to work in a way that pulls with what the town is doing, not sort of causes interference or gets in the way. I want to support you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so you're looking for direction from us to figure out your next steps. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's
And,
right.
yeah, and I just want to say, I think you all thought really hard about the sort of basic conceptual design and the use of space and all of that. Very supportive of all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, let me just say that this has been personally tremendously exciting. I've learned so much, and it's so exciting to see what other centers are doing and to pull this plan together. So I'm really happy about it, and I hope you will be too.
Okay. Any further questions? Well, with that, again, I just want to say you are, oh, Vice Mayor, of
Sorry,
course.
I have to sneak in a comment, and that is that I'm just tremendously proud of the community in coming together on this. You know, it started with an idea of appealing and inviting facility in the senior services roadmap that we endorsed unanimously. But I think a lot of us were really questioning whether we could continue to make progress toward this. And it's only because of the community involvement and really this group not asking for things from town staff, but trying to supplement town staff and trying to supplement our wonderful LGS recreation that provides services. And it's really not only an example of how far we can get, but an example of what happens when we collaborate. And I'd really like to see this be the theme of this community center, is the community coming together and collaborating. And so I just wanted to, again, thank you for that. It's tremendously gratifying to see the town come together on this.
I'd like to second that. The community has been a tremendous, they've done this, not us. We've just been out helping. And in fact, I see a lot of community members here who are supporting this. I wondered if you'd like to, any of you would like to raise your hands and say, hey, this is a good thing. This from teens to us older folks and everybody in between. Thank you.
So I will close that in addition to being proud of the effort, I'm just very proud of our group of leaders. So thank you all. Thank you so much. All right. We can do a round of applause. Okay, our next order of business is the consent items. And those are considered routine town business and may be approved by a single motion. Any member of the council may pull an item, comment on it. And at this time, I don't see any hands raised. I will make a comment on the consent calendar, and that would be on a desk item that we received on item number 2. It seemed that it might be a reasonable request from the chair of the Finance Commission that we could prepare a response for the Town Council and Finance Commission. Would that be possible based on the desk item we got from Mr. Keown?
I had a chance to speak with him prior to the meeting. I think he wants more details about what the differences are. I reported to him that we had about 116 journal entry changes and 97 different invoices that were processed. So we'll be providing them information that we can extract from the report directly to the Finance Committee or Finance Commission.
Okay, thank you. With that, I don't see any hands up, so I'm going to look to the public. Would any member of the public wish to comment on the consent items? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close public comment and look to my council members for a motion. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I move to approve the consent items 1 through 6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. At this time, we'll be moving to verbal communications, and I believe our town attorney would like to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's anyone present who would like to comment on council matters, which is at the end of the agenda, the appropriate time to make those comments is during this verbal communications portion of the meeting.
Okay, keep in mind that speakers have 3 minutes, and I will start with Jeffrey Suzuki.
Good evening, council members. Tonight I will not be speaking as the vice chair of the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission, but as a private citizen and the president of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. I would like to discuss the resolution to prohibit the use of town resources to implement potential federal regulations on topics such as immigration, homelessness, climate, women's rights, and LGBTQ+ rights. There has been a swirling controversy around this resolution, that it declares that we will become a sanctuary town. I've heard more cynical claims that this resolution is just a way for council members to flatter themselves and further their political careers. I really don't see it this way. I don't think that these are true. What this resolution really says is that regardless of the election results, we will conserve our resources for important issues that impact our own day-to-day lives. That we will not use our local resources to facilitate anything the federal government might do to hurt our residents. That's it. It is a reaffirmation of our previous principles in a highly uncertain political environment. I want to be very clear here. This is not a partisan issue. Our town does not operate with political parties. None of you council members were elected because you ran as a Democrat or a Republican. You were elected to look after the people of Los Gatos, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. If you think this resolution is just virtue signaling, that is frankly an insult to the efforts of previous council members who saw it necessary to release similar statements in different circumstances back in 2017 and 2021. A resolution in our current circumstances is not grandstanding, it's not virtue signaling. No one can guess what the future will hold, especially for those who have been ominously labeled as the enemies within. And if we can't even have a discussion about a resolution like this, what a spine we would have if things were to actually become serious. This is worth a discussion. For that reason, I unequivocally support agendizing this resolution at a future council meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gus Hu. Welcome, Gus.
Mayor, council members, I'd like to welcome the new warden. I have 3 minutes, so I got you. Gloves. I got you some hamburger buns. Oops, sorry. 24 of them. There's to be plenty of beef and meat from the public, and little cats. This is a cat and hat down. Oops. So you can do this, and then when you get in trouble, throw in the towel. Also, with a little scooper for to flip the meat and the beef. Okay, that was my presentation. Now you want to go with the easement. This is a little bit more serious. Okay, this is Lynn Avenue and Pinehurst, and we have a traffic problem, and we've already discussed this a couple times. You can see how many cars there are. You see a kid coming with things. I want a walkway or something in front of that. It's very dangerous at night. It's darker early. It's 5:30. There's no light on there, and a couple people already, kids have been told, by the council that they got hit, that people got hit. So I'm just just sooner the better, because that's really dangerous. It gets dark at 5:30 now, and I see people in dark clothes, and I almost, it's hard to see at night. So if you can do something immediately, please do it. Okay, next, water bills. I think. New water bill is coming up. They're increasing our water bill at like 45%. And in Santa Clara, it's a lot cheaper. there's a surcharge that nobody really knows about. There's 33% on the water bill, and then there's a surcharge that's another 15%. So it's something that takes more than a minute and a half to articulate. And I'm not the best public speaker. You guys already know that. I think that there should be a class action lawsuit, which is they'll probably come up, and either the town is for it or against it, but your silence is not helping. I'm going to wrap it up there because I know I only have 15 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. If the town manager could take note of the lighting concerns at this location for public safety concerns. Okay, our next speaker is Johannes Swenberg.
Awesome.
Thank you, Gus.
I forgot to show you my all tomorrow war.
How do I follow that? Thank you. Johannes Swenberg. I'm going to talk on the topic of the resolution just discussed previously to prohibit town resources related to potential federal regulation. I think this is actually fear-mongering and political grandstanding and has really no place in this agenda. There's no regulation discussed, there's no details, so it's vague, ambiguous, and just emotional. Frankly, the federal law is not the law, that is not the town's business. As town council members, you should be leading the town by addressing the town's business and not bringing the country's political discourse. If the desire is to be a sanctuary city, as other cities nationwide have been doing, let me comment on this. I'm going to quote Tom Homan. He's the proposed border czar. In a public dialogue with Boston's mayor, much bigger city, he states, there's a clear line here, and they cannot cross that line. I will suggest that she, and he's referencing the mayor of Boston, read Title 8, U.S. Code 1324, Section 3, which says you can't harbor or conceal an illegal alien from federal law enforcement officers. They cannot cooperate, which is certainly viable, but there are certain laws in place that they cannot cross, and I hope she doesn't cross it, he added. I'll just read a little from the U.S. Code. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment on any of the meaning. This is from Title 8, U.S. Code 1324. Bringing in and harboring certain aliens, any person who, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to and entered or remains in the U.S. in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building, any means of transportation, shall be punished as provided in subparagraph B. And then you got to read all the details. So I'd suggest an attorney review in detail and advise before taking any action which would put any individual in the town in conflict with U.S. Code. Personally, I even wonder if promoting or suggesting to violate the U.S. Code is in itself a violation of some other code in the U.S. Code. I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't want to waste time or resources to find out. I think we should stay in our lane and focus on the town's business. A far simpler approach would be to take the position to uphold the rule of law and not advertise to people the town welcomes specific violations of law. However, if the position is to pick and choose which laws to follow, perhaps you can look also to Sacramento. Perhaps the town should possibly ignore the building code imposed by the state on all the various towns and communities in California. I'm being rhetorical, of course, just for effect. I think keep it simple. Focus on the town's issues of priority to its residents, such as reducing traffic. Thank you.
Johannes, if you could come back. Councilmember Moore has a question for you.
Thank you for being here and speaking. So I'm not sure if this was your perspective or the opinion of the board czar, but you talked about non-cooperation as something that was, in your view or in his view, non-permissible.
That was quoted by him.
Okay, so he says that's
in the paper
permissible.
Yep.
So in fairness, you and the speakers do not have the resolution in front of you because it wasn't on the agenda. But the only thing the resolution says on the topic of immigration is further be it resolved that the town of Los Gatos will not use its limited resources to assist in the deportation of Los Gatos residents. It says nothing about a sanctuary city. It says nothing about harboring anyone. All it says is we will not use our limited resources to actively assist in deportation. Is that something that you would be comfortable with?
I just wanted to caution that The council matter item is just whether or not to put the resolution on a future town council agenda. It's not on an agenda yet, and so it's not a time to talk about the merits of the resolution. It's just whether or not to put it on a future agenda.
I'm happy to come back and express my opinions on that. I'm just bringing up maybe the legal should advise so it's very explicit what it is and what it isn't, because I don't even know. And like define what is resources and what is that line. That's all.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Lindley. I'm sorry, I'm not sure that you can present items.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we stand together in celebration of a truly historic moment, President Trump's second tremendous victory. Once again, the will of the people has prevailed, and with it, we usher in a new era of law and order across our great, very red nation. Trump won the popular vote by millions. For far too long, we've endured relentless attacks, defamation, censorship, and outright lies by the media, and even our own government. We've been called every name in the book, and we never wavered. And let's not forget the chaos fueled by Maxine Waters' dangerous rhetoric, encouraging violence for 8 long years. But no more. The tide is turning. Since the nation's victory, yes, the sore losers have made their feelings known. Throwing dog poop twice on my car, milkshakes on my friends, and flipping us off like all good the other side likes to do, carrying on with their Trump derangement syndrome. Just like in 2016, they're bitter, but the truth is they're losing. They know it, and that's why they're lashing out. But we will not be deterred because change is here. We're bringing back safety and accountability. We're restoring respect for our laws, our communities, and our way of life. No more lawlessness, no more mob rule, and no more slander without consequence. Speaking of which, Rob Moore and Maria Risto, you can consider yourselves served. You will answer for your First Amendment violations and defamatory lies in court. This is what accountability looks like, and it's long overdue. Remember when I said at the start of 2024 that this would be a great year? Well, here we are. A victory for the people, a victory for truth, and a victory for our values. Together, we're making America safe, strong, proud, and we're making America great again. Thank you, and God bless America.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Lee Quintana. And that will be followed by Linda Swenberg.
Hi, I'm Lee Quintana. You all know me. I just have a few comments to make. I support a lot of what Jeff Suzuki said. I would like to reiterate what the attorney said because it's my understanding that this is not a time to discuss the resolution. It is simply whether to put the resolution on a future agenda when it can be receive full discussion, staff report, and whatever else is needed. It's not tonight. So I would urge you to please place the item on a future agenda so it can be discussed. Obviously, there are a lot of strong feelings in both directions on this, and it deserves to have a broader understanding of the issues that are involved. I would also like to thank the previous speaker who gave his welcome package to our new town manager. It reminded me of when I first started coming to council meetings 30 years ago, when Los Gatos was just as divided on issues. They had strong components on both sides of every issue, but they discussed the items with humor and respect. And I think we have lost that, and we need to get it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, and that will be followed by Autumn.
Hi, Linda Swenberg here, and I just want to talk about what's happening in this town, not really the national elections. But I do think that it's gaslighting to say that the proposal to put this resolution on the agenda is not partisan, because unfortunately, Rob Moore did post publicly on LinkedIn that he wants to insulate Los Gatos from the negative consequences of this election. And to me, that is partisan. I'm really sorry, Rob, but I had to say that it is public, and that you can find that on his LinkedIn. I hope that you do not put this resolution on a future agenda. I think it's going to open a very divisive discussion for our community. We can see it starting right now. And it's unnecessary because we already have resolutions and state laws in place that probably do what Rob wants to do. And then the other thing is I would be very cautious to really stick to the council's priorities, that you've worked very hard on, including public safety, and look at what's happened in other communities nearby, like in Santa Cruz, when the town did have to cooperate and work with ICE because they had a large gang element in taking over in their town, and they had to work with them on that. I wouldn't want to prohibit the use of town resources in that sort of situation. So I would be very, very careful about putting any bounds on things if it does come up. But I really don't. I hope it doesn't come up. Okay, I want to move on to another thing, which is I'm not speaking about the agenda item about the speed limits per se, because I don't want to discuss whether 30 versus 35 is an issue, but I just want to point out that unfortunately our engineers did go change the speed limit on Blossom Hill Road. This is not even in the agenda item, and they did it months ago without it being done by ordinance, and worried about the safety for those of us who live along that area of the road, because I do believe that we had an unenforceable speed limit. It was illegal for several months because it was posted at 30 without an ordinance, and that never should have happened. So I'm hoping that we look at processes in this town and prevent that sort of thing from happening again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right, I have 2 more speaker cards, and I would like to remind everybody that we have a 30-minute limitation on verbal communications, so we might be coming close. Anything after that would be later in the evening. So Autumn, followed by Lee Fago, followed by Chris Wiley. I think we can squeeze everybody in.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Autumn. I've lived in Los Gatos for 8 years, and I'm here to express my support for agendizing the resolution that others have already described. I'd like to start with a story about one of the communities that is mentioned in the agenda description of the resolution, which is the LGBTQ+ community, which I engage with a lot in my work as a public health professional. A couple years after I moved to Los Gatos, I met someone from San Jose. We'll call him Ben. And Ben immediately told me, I am so jealous you live in Los Gatos. You all have the best farmer's market. And we do, right? Our farmer's market is incredible. But Ben said something next that I will remember forever. He said, but I don't go anymore because I don't feel safe holding my boyfriend's hand there. And so why am I telling you this story about Ben? Well, I'm telling you the story about Ben because in the 24 hours after the election, the Trevor Project, which is our nation's leading suicide prevention organization for LGBTQ plus youth, reported an uptick in crisis contexts of about 700%. LGBTQ folks across the nation are frankly scared, including folks in our community. They're scared not only about the potential erosion of their rights, but how they're going to be treated when they go to work, when they go to school, when they go to their local farmer's market. It is true that we live in a state and a region and a town that have existing protections for the folks that are described in that resolution. That's true. But it doesn't mean that those folks that are neighbors and friends and residents are not scared, and that this is not a moment that has changed the quality of their day-to-day life in a new and big and impactful way that warrants a reaffirmation, a re-acknowledgement from their surrounding community and government that they matter, that they belong, and that they will still be protected. And so there's two things I really want to emphasize tonight. The first is that I think a resolution like this could really change and be impactful in the day-to-day life of our residents. I think it is a local issue. I think it would show folks that Los Gatos is committed to protecting the systems that protect them, to visitors who spend time and money in our town, like Ben, that they are welcome. And frankly, it seems like a really low resource way to show folks that we see them at this moment in time and that we will continue to support them. And per the comments of some other folks, this doesn't feel political to me. It just feels like a recommitment to what Los Gatos has already promised in creating a community where we all belong, right? We've got that on our downtown signs. The second thing I want to emphasize is, as already has been mentioned, I believe we are only choosing to agendize or not the resolution tonight. And I think it would be great to hear from more community members at a future meeting, those who agree with me and those who don't. I don't see any harm in putting this on the agenda for more deliberation and discussion, and I hope that you will choose to do that tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lee Fago, followed by Chris Wiley.
Good evening, Lee Fago, a longtime resident of Los Gatos, several decades, and I'm speaking for representing myself. I'm not representing any group, any organization. I just regarding this item, whether it should be this put agendized or not, my concern is that it could splinter the community with arguments back and forth. But then that's what a democratic process is to have an open discussion where you decide on an issue. So perhaps agendizing it would be worth doing. However, I do have an opinion on this item, and it is that since California was a republic before it came into the Union, it was the Bear Flag Republic, one of about 6 states that were independent countries before they came into the Union. So with that, when the state of California, or the republic, the Bear Flag Republic, came into the United States, it agreed to abide by federal law, becoming part of the U.S. And therefore, under the federal law, we are to not support illegal aliens in a way that is detrimental to the democratic process. So therefore, let us not provide support for illegal, undocumented aliens, but rather let the federal government deal with that issue, and we should stay out of it entirely. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Lee. Next speaker, Chris Wiley.
Good evening. One of the things that Mr. Moore says is he wants to make our funds to be properly used. And I'm highly suggesting that we write a letter to Safeway. And I have brought this up to the town manager in the past. I've also brought it up to different councilmen and the police chief. If you go into our Safeway right now on Santa Cruz Avenue, there is a display of booze, beer, within 10 feet of that front door. I went around the corner, and as I'm ready to enter, a teenager walks in, grabs one of the 6-packs, and runs down the street. We have had numerous times, and I've reported it and had pictures of kids going through the store, stealing booze, walking right out, and no one from Safeway stops them, and it's too late to call the police. I have been there on numerous nights, and so has somebody else been in there on the one on Pollard, when our motorbikes, our electric bikes, go through the aisles and scare the people, and then we have to call the police. I suggest, like we have at Apple and Lululemon, I think that Safeway should put their own guardians in there before our police are called. I think it'll save a lot of calls, and I truly don't think all the calls are posted that do get called there, because one evening when the kids were running out, police car just happened to go by and said, "I told you a half hour ago to leave." I don't think that got into the report, and then the kids went running down the street. But that our police should not be tied up as often as they are, and also I think it would prevent more pilfering. And I have been there. I was in there one night when 2 kids within 5 minutes walked right through the store, stole a bottle this big at Christmas season, and then another one came around the corner, did the same thing, went out the front door and walked down the street. And Safeway can't stop them supposedly by their policies. Plus, there's a young man that isn't much older than those kids on those bicycles and the kids walking in, and it's not fair to him either. And I know they don't want to get hurt. But I highly suggest, if you're talking about saving our resources, that maybe, and by the way, Nob Hill was hit one night by kids, that I think the Safeway on Union Avenue should be looked at because of the school time, just like we have in our own library, somebody policing it, and the one especially at Santa Cruz, and the one at Pollard. There was somebody here that went in with their wife, went shopping, and these kids went nuts. And they said, "Can't you do anything?" And they said, "No." And real quick, I know I only have 10 seconds left. When is the town going to start painting the whatever the footage is from the crosswalks? I think it'll prevent some accidents. We've had a few almost near accidents. I know the law went into effect, but I think it goes into effect kind of officially in January. And I'll be happy, I'll volunteer to have even citizens paint it if that's what it takes.
Ms.
But
Wiley,
anyway.
I know that they're taking notes, so thank you. I have to be fair to all the speakers. All right, that was our last speaker. Do we have any virtual hands on Zoom?
Yes, we have 3 hands on Zoom. Allie?
Welcome, Allie.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my comment. So although I currently chair the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission, I speak this evening as a private citizen and member of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. It's so encouraging to hear the community come together to work together to improve the community. And hats off to Tom Pickrow and Sandy Decker and everyone at the Thrives Foundation. I think, we can't get enough of that kind of spirit. So at the same time, for me, it's disappointing to hear council members be attacked for supporting the mere proposal to discuss a resolution. That's free speech. That's discussion. That's what we want to be doing. I am constantly asking myself what happened to that country that, in the words of George H.W. Bush, a Republican, aspired to be a kinder, gentler nation. Placing a resolution on an agenda, a resolution that seeks to protect the undocumented from deportation, or LGBTQ plus folks from harassment, or religious folks from persecution, that merely opens up the item for discussion. It's not a commitment to vote one way or another. Have we already gotten to the point where we can't discuss things? Do we have to self-censor even before we open our mouths? Perhaps the biggest danger with regard to the upcoming federal administration isn't its own fear-mongering, but rather the self-imposed fear and self-censorship that lurks within us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Annie?
Hi,
Hi, I'm a resident here in Los Gatos, and I'm also requesting that the council agendize this discussion of this resolution, just to demonstrate the town's commitment in supporting all members of the Los Gatos community. I think this discussion is really important in light of the recent election. I think that as many people here have mentioned, many community members are concerned about what this new administration might mean for themselves and their families. And I think that it's really important that at this local level, we provide reassurance. I think it's really great that it's been drafted. And I think that discussing it is just the next step. And I think that a discussion and an action on an item like this would be really beneficial for many community members at this point. So thank you so much.
Thank you. If I could ask Ms. Wood, I think we have one more virtual hand remaining. Where are we at with the 30-minute time frame?
Correct. We have 3 minutes left.
Perfect. Okay.
Kinsey?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kinsey Lee, and tonight I speak in favor of agendizing the proposed town resolution to protect community members' rights and civil liberties. I've lived in the Los Gatos community for over 2 decades now. It's been a pleasure to watch our town grow and change so rapidly over the past few years. I got to be here for the Walk Against Hate. I was here when we adopted our 2040 general plan. I was here when we passed the formation of our very own DEI commission. Throughout all these developments, one thing that I've always appreciated was the overarching sense of camaraderie here in these council chambers. I've disagreed with my fellow neighbors before, inevitably so, but my thoughts have always been heard and addressed. We've debated the finer points of several issues well into the night, but my concerns are seldom wholly dismissed or tabled when I make an earnest effort to engage with our community. I hope that continues to be the case. By the comments today alone, I believe the proposed resolution brings a much needed conversation to the town of Los Gatos, one inextricably entwined with our racial, social, and environmental justice element for the next nearly 20 years. We stated in that document, increasing diversity and inclusion involves enhancing meaningful community engagement and considering the implications of town decisions for all members of the community. I can't think of a simpler, more straightforward way to honor this directive than opening up nuanced discussion about this resolution in its entirety to the town. All I ask at this time is a chance to be understood and to reach an understanding with my neighbors in a constructive way. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'm closing verbal communications, and we're going to move to our first public hearing, which is item number 7, and that's to consider adoption of a resolution of necessity regarding the Shannon Road Capital Improvement Project. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll start us off. We have a PowerPoint here to talk about this. This is regarding real property that the town needs to acquire in order to make improvements to Shannon Road. And joining us tonight is Nick Muscolino, who is representing the town in an eminent domain action. And so I will start us off with the first couple slides and then pass to Nicole. And so the request of staff tonight is that the town council adopt a resolution of necessity that it explains why the property is needed by the town. It will require a 4/5 vote, and it will also authorize the town attorney's office to take any actions that are necessary to acquire the property. Next slide, please. It's not an opportunity to talk about the amount of compensation. Even if the council does adopt the resolution of necessity, staff will continue to negotiate with the property owner. And in fact, we did meet with the property owner yesterday, and it was a very productive meeting. However, this is just the first step, and it would enable the town to file a lawsuit in the future if that were to become necessary. Next slide, please. So next will be Nick Muscolino, Special Counsel.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Again, Nick Muscolino from the law firm Burke, Williams & Sorensen. Pleasure to be with you all tonight. I just wanted to clarify that no decision on filing an eminent domain action has been made at this time, and that is the issue before you tonight, as to whether or not to adopt a resolution necessity that would authorize the filing of eminent domain action if we were unable to reach an agreement with the property owner. As Gabrielle just mentioned, we do believe we have an agreement with them, but nevertheless, to ensure that this project can move forward, we are requesting that we do recommend that the city council or town council consider the resolution. So the agenda here tonight is first we're going to get a project overview, which will be presented by Nicole Burnham, the Parks and Public Works Director. Next, I'll provide a brief overview of the eminent domain process. Next, we'll discuss the required findings for resolution necessity, and Ms. Burnham will explain how the facts of this case justify the findings that you need to make. Next slide.
And I will pick up for a couple of slides here. Nicole Burnham, Director, Parks and Public Works. So just to get everyone framed appropriately, we were talking about a section of Shannon Road between Santa Rosa Drive and Duca. We received this portion of roadway from the county in 2018, and the county did perform some stabilization along the roadway before it was transferred. But I think we're all aware that it did not hold. And in 2020, the town funded a capital improvement program project to assess the failure of the road and recommend improvements. The design was complete in fall of 2023. And our most recent actions or interactions with this council regarding this project actually involved the temporary repair work that was done in fall of 2023 or December of 2023 to take care of imminent failure. We have been in discussions with the owner for the required property since fall of 2022. The next slide. So the area is subject to eminent domain. I realize it's a little bit hard to see, but let's just talk green and blue. Green is the existing roadway. It turns out that the private property to the north of the existing paved travel lane, their property limit extends to under the roadway. So as part of this action, we're seeking to own that right-of-way outright. The majority of the eminent domain action or the acquisition involves the existing paved area. That's about half an acre. The blue area, which is located above the green on that graphic, is current area, the new area that we would need as part of this action in order to build the roadway and build the improvements. The improvements that we're proposing are two 11-foot wide travel lanes with a minimal shoulder and guardrail supported by a retaining wall. So the area we are seeking, the 7,000 square feet, 7,878 square feet that we are seeking of new area would allow for both the construction of the roadway as well as future maintenance. And with that, I turn it back to Nick.
Thank you. Next slide. So before we go on to the findings that need to be made, we're going to discuss just a little bit about how we got here today and the steps that we have already taken. The steps that are have to be taken to get to a resolution necessity are spelled out by the code. And the first step is, generally speaking, the town will reach out to the property owner and express an interest in acquiring the property. And our goal is always to acquire the property through a voluntary transaction and only to resort to eminent domain as the last resort. The next thing is that the town will hire an appraiser, and we hired a very experienced appraiser to appraise the market value of the property that we need to acquire. That appraiser met with the property owner and discussed his concerns. And then we made what's called a government code offer, in which the town offered to acquire the property interest that Nicole just described for their fair market value. There has been, in this particular instance, a changeover in the ownership. I think in the last month or so, the ownership changed, and we have engaged that new owner in negotiations as well and sent them an updated government code offer. We have not, yesterday, as I think we mentioned, we did, I think, come to an agreement in principle to acquire this via a voluntary acquisition. But nevertheless, to ensure that this process moves along, as Nicole mentioned, it's been going on for about 2 years. we do recommend that this council hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of the resolution of necessity. Next slide. So what happens if the council adopts the resolution of necessity tonight and we can't come to an agreement, a voluntary agreement? In that case, the town would file an eminent domain action in Santa Clara Superior Court. That would initiate the litigation. There would just then be some discovery where each party would hire their own appraisers. And then most of the time these do settle before trial. But really the only likely issue to be tried is the amount of just compensation owed. And so that would be decided hopefully via settlement. And if that's not possible, a jury would make that determination. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the resolution necessity. The council is required to make 4 findings in order to adopt the resolution necessity, and they're described here. The first finding is that the public interest and necessity require the project. The second finding is the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be the most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. The third requirement is that the council find that the interests in the property sought to be acquired are necessary for the project. And the final finding is that the town has complied with all conditions and statutory requirements necessary to exercise the power of eminent domain, including making the government code offer I mentioned a moment ago. Next, I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole, who will explain the project and the facts that would justify you making the findings tonight.
Thank you. So I will walk through each of those findings that's necessary for the requested action. The first being public interest and necessity of the project. Staff asserts that this project is necessary to maintain the use of Shannon Road as a public right-of-way. Shannon Road connects the eastern portion of Los Gatos from Hicks Road to Short Road. It serves as a hillside collector and provides access to many residents from the eastern part of Los Gatos into downtown. It also serves as a potential primary evacuation route for residents who live along that route. Not fixing this road and not moving forward with this project are not an option at this time. With that, we can go to the next slide. We believe that the property being sought for acquisition is what is necessary for the project. As mentioned earlier, a portion of it is the existing road right-of-way, so it would just take into town ownership the actual paved right-of-way that we're already using, and we did seek we are requesting or seeking additional, property that is necessary for the construction of the road. We did our best to minimize the impact to the private property owner, but the construction's not possible without the acquisition of that additional 7,878 square feet. Next slide. We did seek to provide a project design that provides the greatest public good with the least private injury. There were a number of iterations and evaluation alternatives that were evaluated during the design development. At one point during design, there was a bike pull-off partly up the roadway. That was eliminated as in the interest of reducing impact to the private property. We also evaluated shifting the entire road to the south, so not having to impact this current private property. Doing that actually increased the project cost and increased the impact and would have impacted property both to the south as well as the existing property to the north. Next slide. And we believe that the town has complied with the statutory requirements associated with beginning this action. An offer to acquire the property at its fair market value was issued to the property owner on October 14th of 2024, and we have provided our appropriate CEQA compliance. The categorical exemption was filed with the County of Santa Clara in September of 2024. And I will turn it back to Nick to wrap.
Thank you. So the recommended action tonight is to consider the adoption of the resolution necessity enclosed in the agenda packet. Again, that will authorize the town attorney to initiate an eminent domain action to condemn this property. Like we said, we don't think that'll be necessary at this time because it seems like we have an agreement in principle. But as I mentioned, we do recommend that the council adopt the resolution necessity nevertheless, in case those negotiations were to fall apart so that we can continue making these critical repairs to the right-of-way. So with that, our recommendation is to open the public hearing. I think we have represented the property owner, and then close the public hearing and hear comment and vote.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to that, I'm going to see if council members have questions. Seeing no questions, I'm going to open public comment. On my first speaker card is Jolie Houston or Julie? Julie, okay. Welcome, Julie.
Hello, my name is Jolie Houston. I'm with Berliner Cohen, and I represent the former property owner and now the new property owner. And as staff has said, we met yesterday, and we have come to an agreement on the take. I know it's not talking about valuation here tonight, but we did discuss some of the issues that I raised in my letter, the easements. We went through all of that, and so both the property owner and the town have come to an agreement on that. And the only thing I can say is I'm here for Mr. John Toffee. There is an LLC to be formed, and that will be the new project applicant. But there are some moving parts with that right now. But I do have authority from the property owner. So if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer the questions. But we did have a very productive meeting yesterday, and we would have reached out sooner, but the property went into foreclosure. You know, there was no one really to sort of negotiate until just recently. So it wasn't, I don't want people to think that we were stonewalling the town or anything. We were just trying to figure out who was on first.
No worries. Do we have any questions for the speaker? See none. Thank you. Next speaker is Lee Fago.
Good evening. The question I have, and I know you don't have, the council doesn't have to answer this, but that section of the road, of Shannon Road, is that if that is the section that was recently acquired by the town from the city of San Jose, why did the town acquire it at the price that it did and recognize the fact that there were some repairs that were needed? And in fact, they were more severe than what the town initially thought was going to be required to repair that road. And I think, and I spoke on this issue when the town was first looking at making that acquisition, that I travel that road every once in a while, and it was in really, really bad shape. Why did the town not do a better job of negotiating with San Jose for them to not just resurface the road, but to reinforce that road and make it safer before we acquired it, or to include some provision to offset the town's cost for any repairs to that road? So that's my comments.
Thank you. Ms. Whelan, did you have your hand up? Did you want to make?
If the council wanted an answer to those questions, I can provide them at the end.
Okay. All right. We'll wait till the end. Do we have any virtual hands on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Would anybody else like to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close public comment and look to the town attorney if she wanted to answer the concerns.
So the town annexed the road from the county of Santa Clara, and my understanding is that the staff who were involved in the negotiations from both entities were under the impression that a certain type of repair would make the road last. And unfortunately, that repair did not work. And so the town did sue the county, and the county is contributing toward the repair of the road.
Thank you, Ms. Whelan, for providing that background information. Much appreciated. With that, I'm going to look to my council members and see if they have comments or perhaps make a motion. Vice Mayor.
So my question is, would the adoption in any way inhibit the acquisition?
No, as I mentioned during the presentation, adopting the resolution necessity does not in any way preclude the town from entering into a voluntary purchase and sale agreement with the property owner, and that is currently the track that we're on.
Okay, I'd also be interested from town management on their opinion about not just the legal technicalities of it, but the negotiation. Would adoption of this resolution of necessity in any way assist or inhibit the acquisition?
Based on our conversations today with the owner's representative, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
All right, back to council for any further comments or a motion. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff for the work in getting us to this point. And I think because of the change in ownership and time passing as we got to this point, I appreciate the representative for the present owner coming forward and the fact that it looks like we do have an agreement. That said, I also understand that if the council takes this action, we have a backup plan in case for some unforeseen reason things fall apart. And we hope they don't. We know they won't, but having this in place is just sort of the backup plan. So I'm ready to make a motion. I just want to make sure I get everything in here. So it's not exactly written out for me. Let's see. I move to adopt a resolution of necessity in attachment 2 to authorize acquisition of the private property through eminent domain for the Shannon Road Capital Improvement Project, and staff laid out all of the conditions under which we must make those findings for this, and they're included in the attachment, correct?
Yes, and perhaps you could add that the motion includes making the findings included in the resolution.
Yes, and I can make those findings. Do you need me to read each one, or? Okay. And then secondly, I authorize the town attorney to take all steps necessary to commence legal proceedings to acquire the property, to deposit the probable amount of just compensation with the state condemnation fund, to apply to the Superior Court for an order permitting the town to take immediate possession and make immediate use of the property for the project, to take all necessary steps to acquire the property under the law, and to take such actions as our attorney may deem advisable or necessary in connection therewith. And then I just want to add a comment that, you know, this has been a while. We're fortunate that we were able to make a temporary fix, and the road is completely car-worthy for our residents. It's an incredibly important road through the town, but also for all the residents there. And I appreciate that we can move forward so we can make the permanent repair as permanent as anything is with a road. So with that, that's my motion.
Vice Mayor.
Second.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, moving along to other business. Item number 8, to approve the Youth Commission work plan for school year 2024 through 2025. So excited to see our youth commissioners in attendance. Welcome. All right, Chief Field, welcome too.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jamie Field, Chief for Los Gatos Panos Reno Police Department, and also the staff liaison for the Youth Commission, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from them here momentarily. Before you this evening is the work plan for the Youth Commission. With them being an advisory body, we want to bring forward that work plan for you all to review, weigh in on, and provide any direction that you deem to be appropriate within that work plan. The Youth Commission meets 10 times a year under the current 2018 resolution. Part of this work plan is to actually assess and evaluate the 2018 resolution and to potentially bring forward additional recommendations on updating that resolution, likely in the next month or so. So that will be to come. We have met 3 times already this year. Within those meetings, they've identified liaisons and secondary liaisons to various other commissions, as well as identifying 4 ad hoc groups that you'll hear about tonight and how that falls within the work plan throughout the remainder of the year. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the chair and vice chair. And if the other youth commissioners would like to join up here in some of the front aisles to assist your peers, that would be wonderful as well. Thank you. Chair?
Hi, thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. My name is Praveen Balasingham, and I am the chair for the 2024-2025 Youth Commission year. This is my third year on the Youth Commission, and I am so incredibly proud of the work that we have all done for the last 3 years. And especially this year, I'm so glad because we have come up with a really, really great work plan that we hope to get some really great advice on, as well as kind of hear about the ad hocs and kind of the goals that we're running for this year. And so to kind of just preface this, that the goal of the Youth Commission, especially for this year, is to try to focus on a community outreach theme and kind of bringing everyone in the community together in a more inclusive, diverse, and equitable way. And the way we hope to do that is by doing different events that capture the traditional notion of what the town kind of encapsulates, as well as personal projects that the Youth Commission kind of strives to embody what our goals are. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Ryan Itamoto, my vice chair, who's going to talk more about the specific ad hocs, and also you'll hear from the team leads of the ad hocs on what these specific goals are.
Oh. Thank you for the thoughtful introduction. Let's see, I'm going to do that a little shorter. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Itamoto. To tell you a little bit about myself, like Praveen, I have served on the Youth Commission for 3 years now. Last year, I served as the vice chair alongside Taj Chunawala, who was our previous chair, and now I have the pleasure of working with his successor, Praveen. I'm in my senior year at Los Gatos High School, and it's just across the street. In LG, I serve as the student body president, which is a seemingly daunting position to have, but it's been a great way to leverage engagement with our peers, especially our high schoolers, and meaningful town of activities and events. And really, the 1,900 students at Los Gatos is just a small part of the larger community we have in LG. So we have established ad hoc committees that will take on different parts of our community. So these ad hocs are community outreach, teen wellness, environmental, and traffic safety. So one of our youth commissioners will come up, and they will take some time to talk about the ad hoc committee and what they'll be focusing on going into this term. So firstly, I'd like to welcome up Gwen, who will start us off with the community outreach ad hoc.
Good evening. Hello, I'm Gwen, and I will be speaking on the behalf of the community outreach ad hoc. So this year, community outreach is mainly focused on fostering more meaningful connections within our community under the theme of, I guess, community and tying people closer within our town. And to do this, we're starting off with our first event that's coming up in around December, which is going to be partaking in the annual Christmas parade. And we hope by participating, we are going to be building a stronger bond within our team itself, and as well participating in this wonderful tradition that our town has been doing for years. And I'm sure a lot of people like me have been looking forward to all year. Next, you'll probably see on the screen right there that in 2025, we hope to host these events in partnership with the Los Gatos Library in order to tighten the community through our events such as the Lunar New Year's event and as well as the Persian New Year's event in order to celebrate the various cultures that exist within Los Gatos. Finally, we will take part in the Spring into Green event, and this year we will be combining our Easter Snap event that exists to spread awareness about the special needs awareness program that exists within our town, and we'll be combining it with the Spring into Green event that is around April, and we hope to spread a lot of awareness and overall just build a really fun create a really fun time for the youth and everyone in our town to participate in. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rashil Sharma. I'm a second-year youth commissioner, and I'm a senior at Los Gatos High School. I'm representing the Teen Wellness Ad Hoc, and this year our goal is to be continuing our process of drug awareness. As some of you may know, last year we focused mainly on fentanyl with creating a video that demonstrated how to use Narcan and what exactly it is. This year, as I specified, we are focusing on nicotine, mainly due to the fact that over the past 5 years, the use of nicotine in high schools across the country have spiked, with over 1.2 million students using it across the country. This statistic has alarmed us, leading us to promote two points with our Teen Wellness Committee this year. The first one would be to promote the initial burst to quit, following with providing helpful resources to follow up and quit. The first way we will be doing this is through creating small ad-like video segments to be passed out through hopefully high schools and middle schools across our town. And our second way is going to be advancing this outreach with working with our Los Gatos High School's Sources of Strength Committee, which is based on a foundation that focuses on teen wellness and suicide prevention. Hopefully with these two main points, we can further accomplish our goal of sourcing more outreach on important topics, especially with high schoolers and drug awareness. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Anjali, and I am the representative for the Environmental Ad Hoc Committee. I'm a fourth-year youth commissioner, and I'm a junior at St. Francis High School. So our main focus this year is expanding and promoting the plastic straw ordinance from a few years ago. We recognize that awareness surrounding the ordinance is low, and we want to work hard to ensure compliance throughout the town. First, we're going to create digital flyers that are easy to share and eye-catching, which will include facts about plastic pollution, tips for using sustainable alternatives, and more information about the plastic ordinance. We plan to share these through the digital newsletter and our social media accounts. Secondly, we want to connect with local businesses to hear their thoughts and experiences with the ordinance. By understanding their needs, we can create tools like guides for bulk buying sustainable alternatives to make things easier for them. We're also planning on making a short documentary-style video featuring interviews with business owners, community members, and a call to action for reducing the use of single-use plastics. This will be shared on social media and at town events to inspire more people to get involved with this cause. With these efforts, we hope to strengthen the ordinance and encourage everyone in Los Gatos to take part in protecting our environment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eli. This is my first year at the Youth Commission. I'm not the chair of the Traffic Safety Commission, but our chair, Grace, couldn't be here today, so I'm here in her place. So this year, the Traffic Safety Ad Hoc wants to focus on improving the safety of crosswalks near schools in accordance with the town's strategic priorities of bicycle and pedestrian improvements. We would begin by surveying parents and students in local school districts as to the need for traffic lights or other signaling methods and specific places where those would be required. Using this information, along with research compiled from actions taken by other towns or this town in the past, we would try to present a recommendation to the town council, possibly later into our next term, depending on how these phases shake out, I guess. And our hope is that this improves safety for kids who walk to school and decreases bike collisions and car collisions and increases safety. So thank you. We hope you adopt this resolution, and thanks for considering it.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the presentation. Do we have any questions from council members? See none, I will open public comment. I have no speaker cards. Do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
All right, I'm going to close public comment, and I will make a comment that that was an excellent presentation. We are so proud of your work. Thank you. Thank you. Round of applause. Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commission, for your report. And I actually think it's an excellent plan that you have in place. I do want to mention one thing. Listed in our staff report, there was a table with an item which I didn't see you listed in your presentation. Was the bullet here says use Mosaic or other virtual platforms on school campuses for e-bike safety and ordinance awareness. That hopefully is something that's going to stay on your list of to do, because I think that's a really good place you can, all the items you listed I think are going to be great for our society, our community. This is one that I see is becoming a bigger problem. I keep hearing from residents, complaining that, we're not enforcing the ordinances, the kids are being unsafe, and I'm concerned that, we'll have to start doing more with the police or something to try to do that. But if you could reach the youth and students that are doing this to back off the unsafe procedures, then that would help us from having to take other measures. And the funny thing is, walking here to this meeting, it's very apropos, I was about to cross Tate at Nicholson, and a youth on one of those really fat e-bikes came flying through the intersection, not stopping, looked like it was well over the speed limit, wearing no helmet and in sandals. So they wanted to make sure that I remembered to mention this to you, I guess. So anyway, I really wanted to highlight this as an item I think you could really help us out with.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Similarly to Councilmember Rennie, I just want to say those very impressive. You all are very ambitious, and I'm excited to see all of this happen. I think I have one comment on each of the 4 ad hocs. So I will start with the environmental ad hoc. First, I'll just say I think awareness video and promotion with local businesses is such a great idea. One of the things I would consider incorporating into the plastic straw ban is at the same time I think you can talk about the pending plastic bag ban that's going to go into effect in the state. So beginning January 1st, 2026, in about a year, the state of California will completely ban the distribution of plastic bags in grocery stores, restaurants, all these things. And I imagine a lot of restaurants don't know about that yet and would probably, want to be aware of that. So I think as you're talking about plastic straws, it might be great to talk about plastic bags too, because that's, plastic bags is a really big one. There's a lot of plastic bags. Teen wellness, I thought the anti-fentanyl campaigns that you all have worked on in the past few years have been incredibly effective. I think those are, people should write essays on how to be as effective as that, because I feel like I saw those everywhere, and I feel like that really changed the narrative around fentanyl. And so I'm really excited to see the anti-nicotine campaign. For the traffic safety ad hoc, I also love the idea of increasing safety near LGHS and the Civic Center. And similarly to Councilmember Rennie, I think focusing on e-bikes, you could help us a lot if you were able to make a difference on the e-bike issue, because it's something we, all of us, I think, hear a lot about, and it is a real concern. It's a big safety concern, both for youth and adults, everyone. And then lastly, on the community outreach ad hoc, I just want to say, let us know how to continue helping with SNAP. That's an excellent resource that I didn't know about until your chair educated me about it. And I've tried to share that a lot with people, because I think that can really make a difference for people in our community. So overall, let us know how we can help you. Let us know how we can promote the things that you all are working on. It sounds like you're going to put together some really great graphics and videos. I would love to know about those things. And so you can always share those with the chief to get to us, so we can help, spread the word, because the things that you all work on are, just really, really great. You're way better at Canva than I am, or the people that I work with and get paid for it. So, it's very impressive, and excited to see what you all do this year. Thank you for being here.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Again, I want to reiterate what a great presentation this was, how well the information was put together, and the various areas you're working on. And in our staff report, it did discuss that there wouldn't be a new ordinance, that you'd be working on existing ordinances. And I think that's really important and commendable, because, just what popped into my head is when you mentioned that nicotine use has spiked recently. It reminds me that with everything, education is ongoing. You're never done, and things kind of pop up. And so education over safety, education over public health, education over reduction of plastics. You are our future, and you have voices that you use effectively. And it looks like you've got great plans for how to put together the messaging with flyers, with videos, and having seen bike safety videos in the past and the nicotine and the fentanyl, that was the fentanyl prevention that was put together in the past by youth. I know that you guys are going to do an amazing job putting out that information, and we're just happy to amplify it. So thank you. I think this is a great plan. And then there was one thing on here in the staff report that I'm sure will just be a point of discussion, and that was it's really important to us to hear from you how you'd like your role to be on the adult commissions, what type of liaison you'd like to be so that we can make the most effective use of your time and make sure that that works best for everybody. So I know that's in there as well. Anyway, thank you. I'm just so proud that we have such a great youth commission.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for the report and the ideas. And I think one of the things that strikes me is how well developed your ideas and thoughts are, and how those can complement the other work that's going on in the town. I think that our Youth Commission program is unique in the degree of responsibility that we give to the commission, but also in the expectations that we have for the commission to come forward with substantive work and ideas. And I'm in looking at the 6 work items that are in our report, I think that only about 3 of those directly relate to commissions that are established. So 2 things on that. One is that your liaison, I think, could work with the various commissions, because I know that individuals are appointed to some of the commissions, but as a whole, you have ideas that go beyond that individual. And so I think that would be really helpful to carry the ideas to the other commissions and have you work with the other volunteers in our community that are from the adult population. And then the second thing is, with these other new ideas, I think, things like the anti-nicotine campaign and some others, I think we need to figure out how to fold those into the fabric of the local government so that what you are working on can be more than a poster and more than an idea, but in some cases can turn into a resolution or a law or something else that'll really make it stick. So thanks for your effort, and I think we need to figure out how to take advantage even more of your willingness.
So we look forward to your continued leadership, and again, we're very proud of you. And with that, I move to approve the Youth Commission work plan for school year 2024 through 2025. Councilmember Risto.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our next item of other business, which is item number 9. And that is to consider and provide direction to staff regarding a recommendation from the Finance Commission. And we welcome the report. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. As the Mayor mentioned, before you is a recommendation from the Finance Commission requesting that the Council engage a consultant to prepare a comprehensive fiscal analysis for planned growth in the town. So you've seen that recommendation. I think they have some specifics that they would like to see in the scope, but if the council members have any additional items that they would like in the scope, we would love to hear that. Should the council decide to move forward with that recommendation, then we will prepare a RFP, send that out look for a consultant to do that work, and then come back to the council for any other or future budget actions that are necessary. And that concludes my report. We're here for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Vice Mayor.
Question. A fiscal impact analysis was considered in 2022. How is this the same or different than that item? It ultimately failed to pass on a 3-2 vote. How is this different than that?
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor. And I failed to mention that there also was a desk item that did bring that forward. So knowing that that member is also on the Finance Commission, I envision it to be the same. However, we are in a current situation where we have not just this long-term plan growth, which was the general plan discussion, but the growth that's actually in front of us currently in addition to that potential growth. So I think that analysis, we will work closely with the town manager's office as we prepare that scope. But that is why we ask if there's anything additional that the council would like to see in that scope, to please let us know. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know this might be kind of hard to answer because we don't know what the report will look like yet. But with what the Finance Commission was talking about at their meeting, with that kind of understanding of the scope, do we have any sense of how much this would cost?
Unfortunately, I don't. I think we won't know that until we get the RFP and then ultimately determine the scope. There are probably varying levels of detail and information that can be provided depending on the scope that's requested. So again, that's why I mentioned we'll bring back any future budget actions that are necessary once we actually have those proposals, and even potentially we'll consult with the town manager's office prior to selection.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I guess as I was thinking about, what are the financial impacts going to be of future growth? I know that CDD in the past has given us a number, and it's out of date, but it was for a housing unit that sells for, I don't know, $850,000 or something. It essentially pays for its service, the services it uses. So anything that is either under Prop 13 or, is worth less does not cover the cost of the services for that household, and anything sold above that does. And so I guess one of the issues will be, like, as we look at incoming projects, it's unlikely anything will be more than 20% affordable. So 80% of every project coming forward will be market rate, which is well above that level. So I'm not sure, like, will we be looking at that kind of scenario? And then the other thing I think about is our infill projects versus, we've got some that are kind of infill, but they're on undeveloped land, versus redevelopment on something, and how that will impact our cost of roads.
Thank you for the question, council member. So to the first question, yes, I think you're referencing something that was probably in the background report or something for the general plan that had a number. That number for sure will be updated in this analysis. I think ultimately we're looking for that information from the consultants as far as what they see based on the specific parameters for the town. But for how broad it's going to be as far as its short and or long-term impacts to infrastructure, for instance, I think we'll be looking forward to gleaning that information from this report as well.
So as a follow-on, so the things that were the most important to me is, when I think about all of our services, the police department is the most important. As we add residents, we know that we'll probably need to add to our police force, regardless of how the housing is spread out or where it is, we'll still have more residents to respond to. And I know that we're looking at how to put the police department in one location, and I don't know if that's bundled into it or making sure that we have the space for more officers. The other impacts that sometimes people bring up that I think are not under the town purview are school impacts. The school, there are fees that go with that, and the schools do their own demographic studies, so they deal with that. Water, all of the utilities are dealt with by outside agencies. One thing that was brought up by one of the residents was stormwater drainage. And I was curious about that because one of the things that struck me is I know that we need to do a lot of work on our stormwater carrying capacity right now. Will we look at new development? I mean, depending on where it is, if it's redevelopment, it will probably produce less stormwater because it'll have to come up to standards where it's got bioswales, et cetera. What type of development would increase our load on stormwater? And I think we would probably need to study that, like look at the different types of developments.
Thank you for the question, council member. So yes, I believe they for sure would be looking at all of those various utilities and the potential impacts from a financial perspective, and especially since stormwater is the town's purview. So the current regulations nowadays, and I'll defer to Director Burnham if she has any additional information, but there are far more stringent standards for stormwater and runoff than were previously required. So there will be those on an individual project by project basis will be analyzed when that project comes forward, and they'll have to comply with current regulations.
Okay, and then my final question is, as each project comes forward, if it has to deal with its own VMT or its own traffic impacts, those projects as they come along will, my understanding is they'll have to pay for whatever needs to be fixed that they're touching. So I know we've had projects in the past that if they require a new traffic signal or if they trigger a bike and ped change, they have to pay for what we've planned. Is that something we'll be looking at, like if they only pay for part of it, how much more do we have to pay, or how that works?
I think it'll depend on the specific circumstance, but yes, just like previous projects, if there are off-site improvements that are triggered, specifically from the development, then they will be required to make those improvements.
Okay, and then the one comment I'll make is I think this can be useful. I think especially for our police department, especially for what other resources we have that may be tapped by additional residents, more library visits, more use of park. Do the restrooms need to be cleaned more often? I think we're not going to get an exact number. The error bars around everything are huge. We don't know which projects will move forward. We don't know if some projects won't move forward at all. We don't know what new projects will come. But I think in the scope of generally what we're seeing, to get our arms around, okay, these are the things we're going to have to invest in or pay attention to, I think it'll be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's further council questions, I still need to go to public comment. So I don't have any speaker cards. Do we have any virtual hands on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
All right, I'm going to close public comment and go back to my council members with any comments. Councilmember Rennie?
I would just start off by saying I think this is different than when we asked the question before. I recall at the time thinking, when we do an analysis, how do we know what development to put in? And I was thinking to have any useful information, we were going to have a lot of different scenarios and a lot of analysis that was going to cost a lot and not lead to what I thought was going to be helpful information, or at least the helpfulness to the cost. I didn't think the benefit was going to be there. Now the picture's much different. We have a lot of projects in front of us, and we know what they look like, and they actually don't look like what we had expected in our general plan. So if we'd gone and done it then, we would have had a different makeup. I'm expecting that now we have a lot more of these proposed large, dense projects, which I would expect to have a different effect on our needs if they were the 3-story we envisioned that were more spread out kind of thing. So I do see this as different, and I can foresee useful information coming out of this because we have a better view of what the somewhat near-term future could look like, and we're already starting to do some different kinds of planning financially with what the needs of our facilities in our town are going to be. So I think this can also help to educate all of that planning. I, as always, want to be careful about the scope of it getting too large, and that's why at this point I like it better, because I think we can keep the scope to a more predictable future versus trying to a large scope that tries to find where the future might be. I'll stop there for now.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, sort of along the same line of thinking, I have a question and then a couple comments. So, are there firms who do this specifically regarding land use? And do you think that with the information we have right now about proposed developments, understanding that some are not going to happen, some are going to change, you know, whatever, do you think you can do it to a decent degree of accuracy?
Thank you for the question, Council Member. I think that's everybody's hope. So until we get to that point, I guarantee there are a number of firms all up and down the state and across the country that do this type of work. I believe there are even a handful of those called out during the general plan update as well as in the desk item. So there's definitely firms that are used to and qualified to do this work.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, my thoughts are sort of along the line of the scope. So I don't know the best way to limit the scope. I think, you know, I wouldn't want to spend a ton of money trying to figure out how much money, you know, we're going to spend or how much money we're going to gain. And so I think while it makes a lot of sense to look at the 330, SB 330 and Builders Remedy projects, I do think we have to be somewhat constrained. I don't think we can look at, you know, everything that could happen. But I would, one thing that I've been very interested in, you know, since SB 330 and the Builders Remedy have existed in Los Gatos is a lot of those projects are redevelopment. And so they're disrupting existing commercial or retail. And so understanding kind of the trade-off of that and where we might be in a place where we're going to lose tax revenue, I think would be important to understand. And then to Councilmember Risto's point, I think it's really, really important to make sure that we are getting the bike and pedestrian and roadway improvements that we're hoping for on these projects. Some of these are along really major transit corridors that, you know, I don't know if we fully planned for the sheer mass of people that will be at these locations. So I do think making sure that the total amount of infrastructure needed is accounted for. And so I think this is a useful exercise. But again, I think I will want us to limit the total number of dollars spent on this. I don't know that we need to decide that number now. But yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really glad to see that more members of the council are interested in pursuing this than in 2022. I still think that if we had done it then, perhaps we wouldn't have adopted a general plan that exceeded state requirements if we had understood the fiscal impact. But that's where we are, and so I think it's important to focus this for what we need. And so I have some ideas. I'm willing to make a motion as well, but in terms of scope, I think it should be focused on housing element sites, SB 330 and Builders Remedy applications. And when I talk about housing element sites, I'm not only talking about the sites that have been rezoned, but also the programs that could do more townwide upzoning. So for instance, if you convert single-family residences to a 6, 8, or 10 unit, there are going to be some impacts. And so you know, those are the things that I think need to be included in the scope. Just as a data point, I read a number of reports in 2022, and I submitted an example from BAE that I thought was adequate for that task. It was $25,000. For the most expensive version of their report, I expect that things cost more now, and I expect that our scope may be broader, but I don't think we're talking about a huge project. So I would be ready to make a motion unless there's some others. I also understand that this may not be the immediate time to do this, since the town manager is just coming to grips with our 5-year operating forecast and our 7 to 10-year capital needs. So perhaps this can be coordinated with those financial analyses. So I would, in my motion, I'd like to defer to the town manager about the timing, but I think we should do this when, as soon as we can. So my motion is to ask staff to come back to the council with proposals on how to complete the fiscal impact analysis, given the scope of the housing element, SB 330, and builder's remedy applications.
So I was also disappointed in 2022 that the town council could not reach consensus on supporting a fiscal impact analysis when drafting the 2040 general plan. I continue to support a thoughtful and complete fiscal impact analysis so the town council has a reasonable understanding of the impact on growth on this town. So with that, I second the motion. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I'll make a comment. I think this is exactly the right time to be doing the fiscal impact analysis. We now have a better idea of what type of growth is in front of us, and now we can understand what the cost will be, how to prepare for it, and how to adapt. I do appreciate the motion. I think it's important that staff get back to us on the timing and what things. I would like to make sure that staff looks at, as they put the proposal together, what things look important from inside the town departments of what needs to be studied, because there might be things that you understand that we need to understand that should be in there that we don't know, right? So I think a lot of this, we need some staff input. And I think in 2022, if we had done the fiscal impact analysis, it would have been so open-ended, and I don't think it would have changed how we planned, because it wouldn't have been, oh, we're going to do commercial instead. We only had housing to plan for. So now that we see what type of housing, I think this will really help guide us. So with that, I'll be supporting the motion.
All right, so with that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Can I just clarify the motion?
Yes.
Does your motion include coming back, that staff comes back with the discretion from the town manager?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I mentioned at the time that the town manager feels appropriate.
And that's included in the motion?
Yes.
Okay, we're moving to our next item. I'm sorry. What? Do we need a break? We need a break. Sorry, he stepped up. You can come back in 10 minutes. All right, we are back from our break and ready for item number 10. Welcome. We welcome your report on Blossom Hill Road.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Gary Heap, Town Engineer with the town. This evening, I'm going to go over some brief thoughts and summary of the staff report that was provided to you this evening on this topic, specifically about Blossom Hill Road and the speed limit changes that staff is recommending. Again, tonight's discussion is related to the staff recommendations to change the speed limits along Blossom Hill between Santa Cruz Avenue and Camino del Cerro from 35 miles an hour to 30 miles per hour. Generally, speed limits are set through a study or an analysis called an ETS, or an engineering traffic survey. The town is required to perform these ETS surveys every 14 years for the segments within town that we want to have enforced by our police department. When the character of the road changes, a new ETS is required to establish a new speed limit or to determine if the current speed limit is maintained. Following the bicycle improvements and the lane reduction work that was recently done in front of Blossom Hill School, staff went ahead and requested and funded an ETS for that segment. That segment did justify a reduction in the speed limit along that segment, which is between Los Gatos Boulevard and Camino del Cerro, from 35 to 30 miles an hour. In doing a review of the whole Blossom Hill corridor segment between Winchester or Santa Cruz and Camino del Cerro, we identified that we also had an ETS, or engineering traffic survey, for the segment between Santa Cruz and Los Gatos Boulevard that also recommended this, or justified us changing the speed limit from 35 to 30 miles an hour. This ETS segment was conducted following the lane reduction and bike improvements that were done along Blossom Hill west of Los Gatos Boulevard a number of years ago, but the speed limit was never changed. And let me see, talking about then the east side of Blossom Hill, from Camino del Cerro to the eastern town limits, we do have an existing ETS dated 2013 that then justifies the speed limit being set at 35 miles an hour. We haven't done a recent ETS update for that because the segment has not changed, or the character of that segment has not changed. So based on the updated engineering traffic surveys, staff is recommending to Town Council this evening that they consider the following actions. First, accept the ETS, or engineering traffic surveys, for the segments along Blossom Hill Road between Santa Cruz and Camino del Cerro. And secondly, introduce an ordinance amending sections 15.30.235 of the town code establishing speed limits, which then updates the speed limits for those segments identified. Should the town council introduce the ordinance at the meeting this evening, staff will bring back a second reading to the council at its December 3rd meeting. Following that December 3rd second reading, staff will make the changes and post 30 mile an hour speed limit signs along the segments of Blossom Hill changed. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for bringing this to us. This is, I think, super important and very thoughtful, so I'm glad to see this before us. I wanted to talk a little bit about the section going out to the eastern town limits. I know we've had no recent ETS for that section of road, but we did have 2 deaths in the span of 2 months. And, as we all know, traffic deaths, luckily, gratefully, are very rare in Los Gatos. And so if there were an updated survey, would something like traffic deaths be taken into account?
Thank you for that question. Traffic accidents are taken into account. If you were to go ahead and do an updated ETS, you would look at the 85th percentile speed, and then you could recommend justifying a lower speed if indeed there were a significant amount of accidents that had occurred within that segment. It's my understanding that even with these horrible accidents that had occur out there, the overall accidents within that segment would not justify and really rise to the level that would be worse than any other segment similar to that. So we could not necessarily use those accidents, unfortunately, to justify that lowering of the speed limit because the character of the roadway just hasn't changed enough.
Okay, and then a second question, are there other factors or other conditions, or are there other ways that we can find ways to lower the speed limit, especially I think as we're doing, we're changing it to 30 on, large swaths of Blossom Hill Road, and this being, I think, the section that, just a layperson in Los Gatos, if we said we were, reducing the traffic speed on a section of Blossom Hill Road, I would think a lot of folks would probably think it'd be this one because this is where we had the tragedies. And so are there other ways that we can, are there other ways we can find ways to lower the speed limit on this section?
The California Vehicle Code does provide some allowances for us to be able to do that, but you have to meet certain criteria. You have to be able to certify or justify that, along that corridor you have a high level of pedestrian activities. You have generators that are going to generate pedestrians and bicycle uses out there. Along that segment there that we're talking about, which is basically from Camino del Cerro out to roughly on the south side out to Harwood, I don't think we could make that finding with the configuration of the roadway as it is today. Now, we talked earlier this evening about the fact that we did get some grant funding. We are going to be looking at doing some improvements out there, potentially a quick build that could provide some modified section out there, if you will, or lane configuration. Once that's complete, I think that would be a good time to go ahead and look at the speed limit modification.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Councilmember Bristow?
Thank you. Yes, I was going to say that knowing that in the future we'll be looking at some alterations to the eastern part of Blossom Hill Road, working with the City of San Jose, then because what was justified, the way we can justify these reductions in speed in the western part of Blossom Hill Road is due to changes that were made to the roadway configuration, which then changed driver behavior and then tells us this is the speed that we can justify. This is, I think, where we have to go with the eastern part. And so my question was going to be, yes, would we be doing a speed study after those changes are implemented so we can look at whether traffic calming has occurred and we can justify reducing the speed?
Yes, I would say similar to what we've now done along the recently narrowed section along Blossom Hill Elementary School. Once we did some improvements there, if it did result, and again, we're looking at a quick build option, if that did result in a lane reduction in that western or eastern segment of town, then we certainly would do a new engineering traffic survey for that.
Okay, thank you. And then a follow-on to that, how does, if we do reduce the speed to 30 miles per hour, how does that interplay with a school speed zone? Presumably the speed limit goes down to 25 at school time when students are present still, or does it go down to 20?
It goes down to 25 still.
Okay.
When children are present, we'll maintain those signs along the schools, along this corridor.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to open public comment. And with that, I have one speaker card. Eric Miller, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for presenting this. I am a member of the Los Gatos Complete Streets and Transportation Commission, but I am here on my own behalf tonight. I actually joined that commission because when I was a student going through the Los Gatos schools, I wanted to bike to school, and it just never was safe enough. When I was a student at Fisher, I remember at least a kid a year getting hit in the crosswalk, and my mom remembers more. I'm very glad to see that we are considering dropping the speed limits. I would actually like to see it go further, down to eliminate the confusion of school zones and just go 25 the whole route. I recognize we don't have a mechanism for that, but I would love to see that in the future. So I would like to heartily put my support behind this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have another speaker card on the way. Mr. Fagot, please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you for another opportunity to speak. And again, I'm just speaking on my behalf, from representing myself. Well, I guess on my behalf, because I live 2 blocks away from Blossom Hill Road, and right by Blossom Hill School. And I agree with the previous speaker to make that section through there 25 miles an hour all the time would be wise, because kids are coming out of, some of that is the county unincorporated area, and there are no sidewalks there, so the kids have a hard time getting to and from school. And some of the drivers don't see them. I've seen, and you can see the skid marks there where people try to avoid somebody. The other thing is, let's enforce the speed limit for electric bikes, especially along there. It's really bad. Yesterday and today, both. I was driving along Blossom Hill and I saw the kids from the middle school, from Fisher Middle School, going up and down Blossom Hill Road. So I think the fact that we have already covered up the 35-mile-an-hour speed sign that's on the roadway is already been covered up. Let's go with the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit through that whole area of Blossom Hill Road, from Los Gatos Boulevard to Los Cerros. It's far too dangerous, and I think for the benefit of our community, the kids, all of us, that a lower speed limit would be the best way to go, and ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
For staff.
Okay, all right. Do we have any other, I'm sorry, let's see if we have any other hands raised on Zoom.
Yes, we have one hand raised on Zoom.
Can the question wait? Okay.
John?
All right. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, John Shepherdson. I would join with Council Member Moore's comments about Blossom Hill Road out in East Los Gatos. When Blossom Hill Road, as you cross Union, you know, you're going downhill, and I think it's easy for drivers to accelerate, and their speeds can get up to maybe 35, 40, or maybe even 50 miles an hour, particularly if the light is green at Lee. So I would support a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit from Blossom Hill and Union all the way to Harwood, and also perhaps electronic monitoring in that area. And I would note that when you make a left out of Gatos going west on Blossom Hill, there's cars often along the in front of the homes there on Blossom Hill Road, and so a car going east may not see a car making that left turn out of Gatos, and conversely, the car making the left out of Gatos doesn't have a real good view of the cars coming down Blossom Hill Road. And if I'm hearing it right, if it's perhaps necessary to put in bike lanes to bring about the necessary changes in order to bring about an ETS, if I get that correctly, then I would encourage the installation of bike lanes in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any virtual hands remaining?
There are no more hands raised on Zoom.
All right, seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close public comment and go back to the Vice Mayor, who had a question for staff.
Yeah, and I wanted to maybe correct an impression. There have been a number of fatalities on Blossom Hill Road, most recently on the east side, but it wasn't very long ago in 2019 when we lost Timothy Starkey on this stretch of Blossom Hill Road, right across from Blossom Hill School. And I think that we should acknowledge that in the work that we're doing to try to improve it. My question would be, the speed limit, have we really looked at what happened in that situation, and is the speed limit enough? Because this is the stretch that we're working on right now. Is the change in speed limit enough to improve the safety, particularly since we did have a fatality right there?
Thank you for that question. I think the safety itself is enhanced by the quick build that was done there, by putting in the bike lanes and the bollards, by reducing the 2 lanes to 1 lane, which has in effect slowed down the vehicles through there. So that has created the safety enhancement along that corridor.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the report. It was very clear.
Councilmember Rennie, followed by Councilmember Risto.
So when I was thinking about this is, I guess, a suggestion, with the question being, is it an interesting suggestion? after we change the speed limit signs to say 30 instead of 35, people that drive through there all the time aren't going to notice a difference in the sign. So I was thinking, what if we put up some of our portable signs that say something like "speed now reduced for your safety," kind of thing, so that people will see that it's actually changed, because they probably won't notice it until a police officer finally pulls them over and probably gives them a warning for a while. But it might help to actually, put those portable things out for a bit.
Okay.
Yes, that was a great suggestion. We'll take that into consideration. I like that idea, and I think that's something we'll go ahead and pursue.
Councilmember Bristow.
Thank you. I mean, when I think about speed limits, a lot of times you can put a sign up, but the road design dictates how people drive. And putting a sign up on a road that a driver feels like they can drive 40 miles an hour safely and putting a reduced speed doesn't really change behavior, and you can't have somebody there enforcing the speed 24/7. So I think, what we're seeing is that we're approaching this, in my opinion, in the very best way. We're changing the road design, which is then changing driver behavior, which is then changing what the 85th percentile is that justifies that speed limit. And there's always going to be people who speed, and they won't know when they're going to get that ticket, but they will. That said, I have a couple of questions. One is, did we consider going down to 25 miles an hour? I know that the law used to be that the 85th percentile dictated the speed, but I thought the law changed last year, where municipalities have the ability to make the speed limit lower if there's compelling cases. And one would be that it's residential on one side, a park and a school on the other side. And I'm asking that because, it sounds like that would be a more sane speed, and then you're not relying on a driver who's already massively distracted to notice if there's a kid present or not. I mean, that arbitrary go down to 25, if there's a child present, people aren't looking, they're not going to know. And with a park, it could be at any time. I ask that because I would love to be able to consider it. On the other hand, if the 85th percentile says most people are going 30, it's going to be harder to get people to slow down. There are people who will do the right thing just because it's the right thing. So if the sign says 25, it may be harder to get that speed down. I don't know. But I would be interested in knowing that was possible, because I do think in areas where there's schools and parks, children could be present all day, any day, and on weekends, etc. And then I think for the east side of Blossom Hill Road, I personally feel like we just need to wait for the quick build. And if that turns out to be lane reduction with a center left turn lane and bike lanes, etc., those things will inherently calm traffic, or at least in other cases they're demonstrated to calm traffic. We'll find out how our local drivers respond to it, and then be able to justify that lower speed and reduce these crashes, either due to inattention, due to people feeling like they can do whatever. When lanes get narrower, people feel like they have to pay more attention. But I guess going back to my question, do we have the ability to make it 25 in front of Blossom Hill School and Blossom Hill Park, that stretch, and a retirement facility?
So the retirement facilities, there is a special provision in the code which does allow us to sign those for 25 miles an hour, and I believe that is signed at 25 miles an hour. There's a flashing beacon out there, if I recall, but I can double check on that. We did go ahead and utilize the California Vehicle Code authorization to reduce the speed limit in this section to 30 miles an hour using the same criteria you just identified: school zone, high pedestrian zone, high bicycle zone, places where you're going to expect to see children. And so that was one of the justifications we went ahead and used. Going ahead and lowering that speed limit an additional 5 miles an hour when it's not justified through an ETS creates what the vehicle code calls a speed trap, which doesn't then allow our police department to enforce. So we want to be very careful on how we're setting those speed limits, change the character of the roadway to change that driver behavior, drive those lower speeds down, so we can then set the speed limits accordingly, because basic speed law says you set the speeds based on what drivers feel comfortable driving. And along that segment there, where we've now got the lower or the reduced lane configuration, people just naturally want to drive slower in that area, which then again drives that reduction of speed limit.
Okay, thank you. So given what we've got there is quick build, and I'm sure in the universe of all our CIP, we're not going to be able to do anything more substantial for a long time. You know, obviously if those bollards were concrete, drivers would probably slow down as opposed to thinking, oh, I could just hit this piece of plastic. So we can dream. So yeah, I mean, 30 is better than 35. And, you know, we know statistically people will still die if they're hit at 30. And larger vehicles, you know, I'll just give my opinion. I mean, when people buy these vehicles with very aggressive grills on the front, they kill pedestrians and cyclists at a much higher rate than a normal car with a hood, because adults are not scooped up onto the hood. They're hit by the vehicle and then they're hit by the ground. And so, you know, it does scare me that we have so many behemoth vehicles on the road, and at 30 miles an hour, that's a killer speed if you've got a big grill. So, but I appreciate where we've gotten, and, you know, our goal is to reduce fatalities, reduce collisions, and we're going on the right path. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Moore.
I'm ready to make a motion if nobody else has comments. Okay, so I move to accept the 2023 Engineering and Traffic Survey update and introduce an ordinance amending section 15.30.235 of the town code establishing speed limits. And I'm going to add the clause for staff to conduct an engineering and traffic survey on the eastern portion of Blossom Hill Road after the quick build solutions on that eastern portion are made.
All right, do I have a second? Councilmember Bristow.
I'll second the motion.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Question, did we read the title of that correctly, or does the clerk need to?
No, because it's listed on the agenda, posted on the website, and available at the meeting. We don't have to read the title.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to item number 11, which is to introduce an ordinance amending the town code, chapter 14, relating to peddlers and solicitors. Welcome, Ms. Whelan. We look forward to your report.
Thank you. So this item is to update the town's existing ordinances to comply with SB 946 that took effect in 2019. And I have a PowerPoint presentation prepared. Currently, the town has two separate ordinances that address this activity. The first is the peddlers and solicitors ordinance, and the second is an ordinance with regard to push carts. Next slide, please. And so before I go into Senate Bill 946, what I'm recommending to the council is that the council amend the peddler and solicitor ordinance to provide that it doesn't apply to sidewalk vendors. Instead, it applies to people who go door to door selling items. And then replace the existing push cart ordinance with a new updated sidewalk vending ordinance. And then previous slide, please, sorry. I think there was one before that. There was a slide that talked about Senate Bill 946, and it took effect in 2019, and it amended the government code section to add 51038 and 51039, and those sections dictate how cities and towns can regulate sidewalk vendors now. Next slide, please. A sidewalk vendor is someone who sells food or merchandise from a push cart or any of the mechanisms that are described in the statute on a public sidewalk or pedestrian path. Next slide, please. SB 946 prohibits the town from requiring vendors to operate only within specific parts of the public right-of-way unless that restriction is directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns, such as sight lines for cars. The town does not have the ability to prohibit sidewalk vendors from operating in parks unless there is a situation where the town already has an agreement with an exclusive concessionaire in the park. Next slide, please. The town cannot require approval from a non-governmental entity before the vendor sells the merchandise. The town cannot restrict sidewalk vendors to operate only in specific neighborhoods, except that the town does have the ability to prohibit sidewalk vendors in residential zones. And the town can regulate sidewalk vendors to the extent that the restriction is directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns. Next slide, please. And so with regard to parks, the town has the ability to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions so long as those restrictions are tied to the health, safety, and welfare concerns and are necessary to ensure the public's use and enjoyment of the park. Next slide, please. The town also has the ability to limit the hours of operation so long as those hours are consistent with other businesses or uses on the same street. And when the council discussed this in the study session, the question came up as to what, some of the streets in Los Gatos are very, very long. How far does that extend? There's no legislative history on that point, but I do think it's a defensible position and very reasonable to say that we're going to limit it to other businesses and uses within the same block on the same street. The town has the ability to impose requirements that ensure sanitary conditions and to ensure accessibility on sidewalks. We can require a business license or a permit, and at its study session, the council did determine that it wanted to require permits for sidewalk vending. And then I won't repeat the rest of the slide. Next slide. We can require them to submit information regarding their operations, and we can prohibit sidewalk vendors from operating near certified farmers markets and other events that are using a temporary special use permit. Next slide, please. We've covered the material on that slide. So I'll just review the recommendations from the study session that was held in August. The council was interested in requiring that all sidewalk vendors obtain permits, prohibiting sidewalk vending in areas that are zoned exclusively residential, limiting the area taken up by sidewalk vendors to 15 square feet, prohibiting pop-up tents, prohibiting blocking of entrances to businesses, prohibiting anything that obscures the line of sight at an intersection, regulating vendors in parks, and limiting the hours of operation. And so the ordinance that is before you for consideration does include those provisions. Next slide, please. We've discussed the proposed changes. Next slide, please. Since the staff report was published, we have made some minor changes to the ordinance. The first is that the town manager suggested that there be a single application form that is submitted to the town as a whole, and that application form will be routed to the police department and Parks and Public Works department as necessary. And so that adjustment has been made in the ordinance. And then secondly, the ordinance is before you for adoption limits vendors in parks to one vendor per park location. The feeling was that more than one vendor will really disrupt the public's use of the parks in town. Next slide, please. And so if the town council introduces the ordinance tonight, it will return for adoption at the council's December 3rd meeting, and it would take effect 30 days after that.
Thank you for the presentation. I look to my council to see if there's any questions. Seeing none, I'm going to open public comment. We have no speaker cards. Do we have any virtual hands on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
I'm going to close public comment and go back to my council members. Vice Mayor.
So the proposed change to limit to one vendor per park, which I think is a good idea, is that going to run afoul of the state law?
No, because the state law authorizes restrictions in parks so long as the restriction is necessary to ensure the public's use and enjoyment of the park.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say this. I think this is a really thoughtful way to address the unique challenges we had in Los Gatos. I think we weren't anticipating some of the issues that came up with this. So I think this is great, and I appreciate the revisions.
Okay, any further comments? Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion then if I don't see anybody stepping up. I move to introduce an ordinance amending the Town Code Chapter 14 related to peddlers and solicitors and replacing Article 7, push carts with sidewalk vending. Do I have a second? Councilmember Moore?
Second.
Councilmember Rennie, do you have a question?
I do have a question. So in the written discussion, it says 2 vendors per park, and I think you've said you changed that. Did you change it in the ordinance that's written in here?
Yes, it's been updated in the ordinance, just not the staff report.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Move on to item number 12, which is to introduce a draft revised sign ordinance. Ms. Whelan, we look forward to your report again.
Thank you. I also have a PowerPoint for this item. And so as the council will recall, the town amended its sign ordinance in May of this year to remove any content-based regulations. Over the summer, we had a number of code enforcement matters that raised a few issues with regard to enforcement. And so I'm returning to the council tonight with some additional proposed amendments. The proposed amendments have gone to the Planning Commission on October 9th, and the Planning Commission did recommend that the Town Council introduce the revised sign ordinance. Next slide, please. And so these next slides talk about the proposed changes to the ordinance. So right now, there's a size limit on temporary signs at intersections that limits them to 1 square foot. And we've realized that real estate signs, which typically take advantage of this provision to place signs at intersections, are commonly measured 2 feet by 2 feet. And so staff is proposing that we revise the ordinance to allow temporary signage at intersections that measures 2 feet by 2 feet. Next slide, please. The next change is that there was a section in the ordinance that addressed temporary signs, but it didn't specify that we were talking about temporary signs on private property as opposed to public property. And so we're proposing an edit to make it clear that we're regulating signage on private property. The third change is there was a subsection that prohibited posters on objects in the public right-of-way. And we are proposing to replace that heading with the term signs so that it's clear that signage of any kind, not just posters, is prohibited on objects in the right-of-way. Next slide. So formerly, we had 2 different provisions of the code that prohibited, they addressed signage on public property. There was one provision that we just talked about that prohibited posters on objects in the right-of-way. And then there was a second section that talked about signage in the medians and other areas of right-of-way. And I'm proposing that the ordinance be amended to have the prohibition on signage on public property located in the just one subsection so that people don't have to look in 2 places. And so it will provide that temporary signs are prohibited on public property, including parks and public right-of-way, which includes sidewalks, roads, street medians, and the portion of the right-of-way between the road and sidewalk. And so it'll all be located in one subsection. Next slide, please. questions have come up about how the sign ordinance is enforced. The town's code compliance officer does take in complaints, and the initial step is to issue a warning, and then the next process is to issue an administrative citation. And the administrative citation fines start at $100 for the first violation, and they go to, I believe, $200 for the second and $500 for the third. Next slide, please. And that's the end of this presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions from council members? Councilmember Rennie.
So I'm trying to figure out whether it's excluded somewhere. So we're not allowed to put posters on poles that are in the public right of way. Does that mean you can't put up a lost cat sign?
Technically, the ordinance does prohibit that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to open public comment. Again, I don't have any speaker cards, any virtual hands on Zoom.
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
I'm going to close public comment and go back to my council members for comments. Motion? Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I think we'd already worked through most of the tricky issues, and I appreciate staff catching some of the inconsistencies and neatening everything up, and the work of the Planning Commission. So I'm ready to make a motion unless anybody had other questions or comments. So I move to introduce the draft revised sign ordinance. Do I need to read the title? Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. With all of the revisions that we just reviewed.
Okay, do I have a second? Councilmember Moore.
Second.
I'll call a question. All in favor? Did you have a question or comment?
I had a comment, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
I've had a chance to think about this, and I think it's important for our residents to understand why we're doing this. And in my opinion, we're doing this because we've been forced to do it by the state legislature, and that it is another example of overstepping and removing local control on matters that are well handled within the municipalities. And I also think that it's a bit of an unfunded mandate in requiring ordinances to be changed and enforcement and things like that. So I will be supporting the motion, but I wanted residents to understand why we're doing something like this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, now we move to council manager matters, and I'm going to start with the vice mayor.
If you just give me a minute to get my calendar.
All right, I'll start with Councilmember Rennie.
Oops. All right. Mic on. So on November 6th, I attended the Finance Commission meeting. November 8th, I met with two of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy board members to discuss board norms. We're sort of an ad hoc committee for that. November 13th, I met with the Meadows rebuild team to talk about the Meadows. November 13th, also Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board met. And I attended the Los Gatos Rec Thanksgiving lunch with actually all the other council members on November 18th.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. It's been 5 weeks since our last meeting, so I am not going to rehash my calendar for the last 5 weeks, but some of the highlights, well, first of all, as part of my town duties, I attended the Silicon Valley Water Commission meeting in October, our quarterly meeting with discussion of being drought resilient and what type of work Valley Water needs to do in the future, what kind of capital projects need to go in. Is it going to be expansion of, a continued conversation of, will it be expansion of reservoirs? Will it be more recycling? All of the above. And I think permanently we just need to think about water as a precious resource and continue to conserve and be more efficient. I also represented us on the VTA PAC, the Policy Advisory Committee meeting just last week. Two highlights are I went over to Santa Cruz to see the 1-year update on the Highway 17 wildlife undercrossing at Laurel Curve. So if anybody drives Highway 17, we will, on our side, near Trout Creek, not far from Lexington Reservoir, ultimately have an under and overcrossing that will protect drivers and animals from collisions on 17, and will also link up to 5 open spaces. But the data from the opening on at Laurel Curve is just astounding. There's cameras at each end of the undercrossing, and they showed so much video. It's in color and with sound. So you could hear the cars in the background, families of foxes, there was a badger, there's mountain lions, there's deer. What was really astounding is, I think leading up in the few years before it was implemented, there were 20-some deer killed on Highway 17. And if you've ever been in a vehicle that hits a deer, it can also kill a human in the car. Since in that 1-year time, 0 deer have been hit on 17. It's an absolute success, and it's an example of how sometimes infrastructure is put in with one mindset. We have to get cars over the hill, and neglecting the fact that open space was cut in half. Not only were wildlife trying to cross the freeway unsuccessfully, the wildlife that was deterred from doing that are starting to reduce in genetic diversity. The mountain lion populations were getting kind of fragile, and so they're looking at other undercrossings. Anyway, very educational scenario, but also a lesson I always think about with any transportation issue. How do we think about all the users? How do we think about all the space? And the other really cool thing was Bear Creek Redwoods. Okay, so Mid-Penn Open Space has opened the next phase of the Bear Creek Redwoods. So if you just go up Highway 17 to Bear Creek Road, it's 8-minute drive from downtown. And the second phase opened. The trails are dedicated to former council member and Mid-Penn Representative Pete Siemens. So the upper trail is now called Upper Pete Siemens Trail. There's middle and lower. There's some other trails going in. They're beautiful. I recommend anybody go up there. There's a whole bunch of information called Layers of History, where it talks about the indigenous people that lived there first, how the settlers came in. It's the site of the old Alma College. There's some mansions there, residue of that. And now there's trails, and there will be equestrian trails opening, and the next phase is the stables. So those were things where I look at work that started a long time ago with a lot of vision, and it takes money and it takes time, but because it was started, it's now there. And so we just continue this with all our projects. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So in October, really the most important thing is I attended the League of California Cities annual convention in Long Beach, and I learned a great deal from some of the sessions. But most importantly is on the exhibit floor, there were about 3 or 4 folks offering things that I thought might be of use. So I have them scribbled on little notes, and I will share them with the town manager. That he was there also, but some of them I think are, some services are really relevant to some of the things that we're facing. After a little bit of a trip that I took, I had a number of meetings with Los Gatos Thrives, the executive committee as well. I met with Councilmember Tina Walia from Saratoga, and continued to learn about some of the challenges and ways that we might be able to work together. And then I met with the director of NUMU, understood some of their needs, and I offered a few ideas as well. And I met with Summerhill regarding Los Gatos Lodge development. And on the 14th, I participated in the Santa Clara Cities Association meeting. I was an alternate on the Legislative Action Committee for Councilmember Moore, and they recapped all of the work that they did, and I think a lot of that we need to share with the council. The other thing that came up at the board meeting was the annual event, and I think they've scheduled that and they've invited all of us to attend, and I don't know whether we pay that out of pocket or not, but I think it would be really worthwhile to attend, as it's a really, really valuable organization. It allows the smaller cities to have a voice, and so I think it's really important. And then Community Health and Senior Services Commission meeting. Yesterday, I participated in an event called Here I Am Silicon Valley at Congregation Sinai in San Jose, where Mayor Mahan spoke and a number of other folks spoke out against anti-Semitism. And I participated in a democracy tent and fortunate to have that opportunity. So it's been pretty busy the last couple of weeks.
I've been busy too. On October 17th, I participated in the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Foundation Recognition Luncheon. On October 23rd, I attended a meeting of the West Valley mayors and managers at Gardenia Restaurant with our interim town manager, Katie Nomura. On October 29th, I participated in a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the reopening of the Discovery Shop. Their relocation is on Main Street. On October 30th, I participated in a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the 10th anniversary of Coupe de Taille. On October 31st, I attended a meeting with the executive director of the West Valley Solid Waste Management Authority. On November 4th, I was a guest speaker with the Democracy Tent. Hello, Lee. I provided my reflections as mayor and my key accomplishments through 2024. On November 6th, I participated in the Fisher Middle School Veterans Day ceremony. Later that evening, I attended a meeting of the Finance Commission. And on November 7th, as board member, I participated in meetings of the West Valley Clean Water Authority and the West Valley Solid Waste Management Authority. On November 12th, I was a guest speaker at the Rotary Club, providing a progress report of town council actions through 2024. And on November 14th, I participated in a ribbon cutting at Carnico Tools and Provisions on North Santa Cruz Ave. They sell really fine marbled ribeye steaks, so it's just not about tools as one might think. On November 15th, I attended Art in the Chambers. On November 16th, I participated in the Los Gatos Rec Veterans event. And on November 18th, along with all the council members, I attended the Los Gatos Rec Thanksgiving luncheon. I also received a request from Councilmember Moore to agendize a draft resolution. And before I turn to him for his council matters, I need to report that I did not support the proposal for the following reasons. I found it to be a repetition of a prior resolution from 2017. I found it to be redundant and overreaching of Senate Bill 54. I felt there's potential unenforceable provisions regarding scope and enforcement. Insulating Los Gatos from consequences of an election is not within our role as council members. I also believe in good governance and being open and transparent, so I therefore made the call that Councilmember Moore bring forward to the full council his request in openness and transparency so that we can all discuss it and see if there's a second that want to bring it forward. And with that, I turn to Councilmember Moore. Respectfully so.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it and completely understand. Thank you all for considering my request to agendize a draft resolution that reaffirms the town's commitment to supporting all members of the Los Gatos community. I'll briefly share my rationale So I genuinely wish that I did not feel compelled to introduce this resolution. I know this is a heavy topic to be discussing after a long meeting, though not as long as some of ours. I feel obligated to bring this resolution, though, in response to the concerns of many Los Gatos community members I have heard. In the wake of the results of the recent election, I have had numerous residents, many people, reach out, especially women, residents of racial minority groups, LGBTQ residents, and immigrant residents, share that they are scared, they are hurting, and that they would like their town government to demonstrate that we are supporting them. Unfortunately, I believe that some of these fears are well-founded, as the new federal administration has recently stated their plan to declare a national state of emergency to conduct mass deportations in cities and towns around the country, and their plan to force homeless people into tent cities. I also think the comments shared by our community members this evening provide some very compelling reasons for at least agendizing this resolution, including the heartbreaking story that I had not heard of an individual not feeling safe to come to the town of Los Gatos. And I really do feel like we have the power to help change that narrative. I believe that agendizing this resolution provides both the council and the community the opportunity to discuss how best to respond to proposed federal policies, which I do not think is a controversial idea. I think that we have a real obligation and opportunity to talk about what we're going to do for our town residents who do not feel safe. Other towns and cities, police departments, the county government, and the state of California have already issued similar statements to this draft resolution in the past few days, despite SB 54, despite lots of prior resolutions and statements. You can find strong statements, much stronger than what I have proposed, from the San Jose Police Department, the City of San Jose, other cities, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, the Santa Clara County Sheriff, and the Office of the Governor on their websites. As representatives of our residents, I believe that we have a responsibility to take action when our residents feel fearful of what is to come. I feel that it would be untruthful to pretend that the fears of our residents are not legitimate. I believe it would be unrepresentative to let these concerns go unaddressed, and undemocratic to let these dystopian ideas of harassing and persecuting Los Gatos residents go unchallenged. I think it's important to remember, as we're all aware, and I am continue to be reminded, that we are not voting on whether or not to support the draft resolution. There were many members of the public here tonight who just want to see this resolution agendized to allow all of us to have a proper discussion about these issues. Seconding this resolution does not mean that you support it. It doesn't mean that it will pass. All seconding this resolution does is let us have a conversation about how to best respond to the very real concerns of people in our community. I respectfully request your support for agendizing this draft resolution to ensure we are doing everything in our power to protect the residents of Los Gatos.
Okay, would you wish to include any other council matters, such as meetings that you might have gone to?
No,
or?
I don't need to take more time.
Okay. All right. I am looking to fellow council members for comments or support of his request. Vice Mayor.
Question procedurally, do we need a second to discuss the motion that's been made?
I understand that we would need a second.
Let me clarify. To discuss whether to place this on the agenda.
No.
I believe that's what the motion is, to place this on the agenda.
I'll look to our town attorney.
So there's a second required to place it on a future town council agenda. There's not a second required to discuss the request.
So he just made the request, so we're looking to see if somebody wants to support it. And if we don't see anybody support it, I see that it will fail.
I'm just going to add one last comment. There is an individual on my street who is undocumented, who specifically requested that the town of Los Gatos do something to protect them. I would be absolutely devastated personally to return to that individual, and when they ask, what did the town council decide to do to protect them, I would have to tell them that we were not even willing to have a conversation about it. I understand if it's not something that you all want to take up, but I really feel that our residents deserve this conversation.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised for further comment or action. So with that, I am going to go to our town manager for the town manager report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to thank the council, staff, and the community for such a warm reception coming into the town. This is my first council meeting. And I have to say, it's nice returning back home to an area that I grew up in, and while I was born on the border, spent a lot of time in Los Gatos with a lot of Los Gatos residents as classmates. And it's an absolute wonderful and warm community. And I see that from the day I've arrived, and I see that of how the public interacts with the council. I want to also thank the assistant town manager, Katie Nomura, for the 2 months that she took the reins with the retirement of the past town manager. And lastly, to Laurel Prevetti, our last town manager, I want to thank her for the steady leadership she provided the town, the development of staff, and how far along she brought this organization. And we should commend her for the work that she did. And I wished her well in retirement, both during and after she retired. So with that, Ms. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, and we're thankful to have you. And speaking of being thankful, next week is Thanksgiving, so I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, peace and joy to all. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.